Hey everyone, it's Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
And I am a creation of Yoko Taro.
And I still think you look more like Roxas with all of that.
You know what? I'll take it. I'll
Um,
take it. I'll take that as a compliment.
it's Squeenix either way.
That's true. That's true. It is.
But this is episode 188. We're just on a tear because Victoria keeps like being proactive about asking me to record, which is
I'm
crazy.
being proactive for once.
Um, yeah, I haven't even had time to edit any of them because we've just been recording as fast as I can listen to stuff.
Yep.
Um, so
I'm
we're
unstoppable.
we are already at the end of this album 68. um Out of the Blue, I believe it's called, right?
Yes.
Yes. So what are we talking about today, Victoria?
Today we are talking about Always Home,
Yes.
I think. And I have listened
Further.
further from home.
Further from
Treasure.
the, what's the
Truth.
episode about? Yeah.
The truth.
Yes.
Further from the truth.
And then what is, and then the whole album because it's the
And
end.
then the whole album review,
Yeah. Okay.
which we always do.
So episode 884, Always Home, written by Marshall Younger. What happens in episode 5?
Um, as I've been doing with this whole album, and I always do during the summers, I was listening to this at work, and it almost made me cry my eyes out. So, in this episode, Devin's predictions were totally right because we on that money with the predictions this season. So, yeah, I saw like the first couple words of the sentence description for this episode. So when Devin was like, "I think it's going to be about Wyatt's dad," I was like, "Yeah, yeah, you're right."
Yeah, I was close enough. My guess was that it was like about Wyatt always being like home by himself and dealing with his like abandonment issues of like his parents always being gone, and that was close.
You're
I was
close.
in the right area.
Mm-hmm. Um, so we have Wyatt's dad coming home for like a little quick vacation
A week.
and from the war efforts, and Bridget is just not taking it well, and she's kind of avoiding him. Wyatt tries to pack like an entire year's worth of holidays into like 3 days or something like that. So he's literally booking every minute. And Bridget's having a hard time dealing with all this stuff and her dad being back. And Whit, meanwhile, is acting weird. And Connie's really worried about him. And I was listening and I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to kill off Whit. Do you think that too?
I
At
was
all?
like, oh man, what's pregnant again?
um, yeah, there was actually a part of me that was like legitimately worried that they
Yeah,
were gonna kill off Wit
I was
so they
like,
wouldn't
what's
have
like
to
really
keep on
sick?
recasting him because they were tired of doing
I
it.
mean, I wasn't like, Wit's gonna die immediately, but I was like, this is something medical. Wit has some
Yeah,
illness.
yeah. Because like they've been doing that kind of thing a lot since like the hiatus
Well, because
ended and stuff.
they also painted it not only as Wit is keeping secrets, but also like he seemed kind of like forgetful and like
Hmm.
unaware of where he was, sort of thing.
Like something's wrong with this
Like he was a
guy,
bit like
and
disoriented.
there were so many points where I was worried that like that thread was just going to be dropped or Connie wasn't going to get to talk to him again at the end of the episode
Hmm.
cuz like it that's the last thing that happens in the episode, and I was thinking like I don't know how much time we have left. Connie still hasn't talked to him and then she did, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Did you wonder at all if it was like he was stressed out with the stuff about Maury still? That was my other theory.
No.
Because with the escape room episode, he's like, I need to pray about this.
No, I wasn't thinking about that.
And when he was in the office, he was like, I just need to pray, leave me alone. And I was like,
I think at that point, I did have a moment of like, is there like something really bad happening? And my mind did go back to the Writer's Ruse episode where Wit was like, I sense like a dangerous spiritual presence in Odyssey, which is Maury.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. That wasn't the escape room, that was Writer's Ruse. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, my mind did connect to that, but I don't think I thought that's what was actually going on.
Then Bridget and Wyatt's turtle dies, and then they throw a little funeral, and then their dad's like, and Bridget and their dad to like make up and stuff. And then Wyatt's dad's all like, you know what? You know what's cool about turtles? They have their shell on their back and they're always home. And that line, I was just like, my heart. And that was like right after we find out why Wit was so upset. And it's because it was Tom's birthday that day. And to which I started suppressing like the fact that I was going to tear up. My throat was choking up. I was like cutting out crafts for little kids at work, and my coworker was like talking to me across the room. I was like, yeah. So that was that episode. It made me have a lot of feelings. Connie sits with Wit at the end. And she's like, are you okay? It's Tom's birthday today. And I'm glad that he didn't have to tell her what was wrong. And then she's like, do you want to talk about it? He's like, I want to talk about literally anything else. I want to sit in that booth and I want to tell you, like, I want to find out how you're doing today. And I was like, yeah, I feel that when you're upset, you don't want to talk about it. You want a distraction. And Connie's like, well, I just got this email from this old friend, and I was like, girl, who was it? And then the audio fades out, and the music comes in, and I was just like, you just did that because you knew we would call you out on whoever it was.
I did think that we were going to hear just enough, like, not a name, but enough to, like, piece together, like, oh, is this person? But no, it was, like, it's thoroughly drowned out.
Yeah. Like, I thought we'd get, like, a first letter or something like that. Like, you can kind of make out a noise. You cannot decipher what word it was. I thought it was going to be, like, the name isn't Marcy. That's the one who made the cake.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
What's the name of the girl from...
It's not Stacy.
From early on.
Yeah.
Who's, like...
I know who you mean.
Best friends with Connie in
like, album 4.
Golden albums.
Yeah.
What's her name?
I don't remember.
Oh, it's driving me crazy. I'm going to look it
up. Look up, like, Go Ye Therefore.
She's also in the first one with our boy Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay, you keep talking.
She's also in, what's the... A's for Attitude. That's what it's called.
Cheryl.
Yeah.
Which does not start with an S, but you had the right spirit. I'm a little confused, but he's got the spirit.
Okay. So, this episode, we've been going absolutely ham lately, and we'll touch on this in the next episode on the whole, like, are you in the imagination station? Are you not in the imagination station? Is this person real? And, like...
I think the writers, like, I don't know if any writers still, like, watch our podcast. Either they do, or they don't, and they're just becoming more self-aware of, like, all the tropes that they do a lot.
It's like, was it, what, 1 episode ago, 2 episodes ago when we last talked about it? And then we have 2 episodes in a row.
Because the one before this was...
Breaking News.
Yeah.
And before that was a Why Surprise.
Yeah, so it would have been like 3 episodes ago.
Playing Favorites.
Why were we talking about it?
I don't remember. Playing Favorites, Good Job, and then Lifted Out of Context. And so was it Morningstar that we were talking about it?
What happens in Morningstar?
That Matthew's in the imagination station is learning about Whitcliffe
We were talking
and the
about with
Lollards.
that one,
It could have
how
been
everyone comes out of the imagination station. I think we just talked about it in general
well
in
because we
that
did the
episode.
AIOC review and it probably came up in there.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was probably it.
So, yeah, we were just talking about it, and then we had 2 episodes in a row that dealt with this. So, I mean, admittedly, it was a pretty good trick, and I love that we just got another variation on the old, like, hey, it's a real person, the imagination station trick. And the variation this time is they weren't in the imagination station, it was just a closet. I didn't realize
I totally
until.
forgot about that beginning. I did not know what you were talking about for the past 5 minutes. I was just going with it.
I didn't realize until the end of that whole bit that, like, oh, that is actually him. He's actually
See,
here.
I really wish I didn't see the album description by accident
Yeah,
because I immediately knew like that was actually him.
so it's interesting because I knew, like, obviously it's called Always Home, and I already predicted it was going to be about, like, Wyatt's family situation. And so when Whit was like, I'm sending you guys into the imagination station and you're going to get to, like, see your dad. And I was like, is Whit going to do something like a grass is always greener on the other side kind of thing where it's like your dad, you're going to go into adventure and it's like your dad's home all the time, but then you're going to realize actually we're sick of our dad when we see him all the time.
We realized,
We don't want
we don't like him.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, that's where my mind would go from a narrative perspective, but that seems like kind of a weird thing for Whit to do. And then they were in the
Can you
closet.
imagine like Whit did this without permission from either of Wyatt and Bridget's parents?
Yeah.
And then they find out and they're like, dude.
You know, it's like when couples talk about, like, oh, I had a dream about my partner where they were, like, mean to me and now I'm angry at them, like, in real life. It's like Whit makes them angry at their parents for something that their fake parents did in the imagination station.
See, that's never happened to me where
Yeah, me either.
where like someone's done something bad to me in a dream and then I'm mad at them the next time I see them. Like,
Because that
my
would be
dreams
weird.
are crap. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I have had dreams where people I know and love are very upset with me, and then it makes me upset for the whole day. I think there have been maybe like there's one time in the past year where I either like texted you or Gabe or someone like that, and I was just like, hey, I know this is stupid, but like, are you mad at me for some reason? Because like, I'm sorry if I did anything. And they were like, no, it's fine.
I don't think I
it was
remember
with
ever
Gabe.
getting a text from you like that.
I
That
think it was. I think
wasn't
it was with
accompanied by a
Gabe.
specific reason why I would be.
Yeah, I think I asked Gabe at church one day. I was like, "Are you upset with me?" And she was
So
on the
upset that
camera.
you're, like, astral projecting into my dreams.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. My dreams are dumb. We both know that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was like, we didn't hear the imagination station noise, and he's like, this isn't the normal door. And then also they're in a broom closet, but at
Yeah,
this
but he
point,
has like portable ones now, so nothing
exactly.
means anything
And
anymore.
so all of that seemed like, ooh, Wit's kind of making it even more, like, more immersive. So, like, you can't even tell, like, the seam where the program begins, and, like, oh, I'm just in a closet, and then I'm gonna, like, go back out and I'm in the station now. Like,
What's like this series is gonna end with Wit putting everyone in the Matrix and no one even realizing. Like,
yeah, I said in my notes for the next episode, like, the psychological trauma that the kids in Odyssey and
yeah, that's
Renee,
what we were talking about with Matthew
endure.
in Morningstar.
Yeah.
He like got put in jail
Yeah.
and he almost got hung.
And we were talking about, like, yeah, at George, Barkley, and Jimmy, and, like, if you die in the station, do you die in real life? And, I mean, like, here's the thing. Unreality is, like, a very significant symptom of a lot of mental illnesses. And so the fact that Whit has these programs that play, I mean, obviously he didn't, the next episode wasn't his fault. Well, it was his fault, but he wasn't his intention to cause this. Everything's
But
Whit's
we'll get
fault
to
if
that.
you trace it back far enough. He invented the technology, but yeah,
I was gonna say, you know, in Terminator 2, but you've never seen Terminator 2, you hack.
I know.
You know how like Arnold melts down
Yeah.
in like this huge vat of lava or molten metal or whatever?
Uh-huh.
Whit needs one of those in one of the underground levels of like Wit's End so he can just like throw his junk in there.
Mhm.
So what happened in the next episode, like doesn't happen anymore. Because, like, there's no way to get rid of his tech. Because, like, he gets rid of an imagination station, and, like, everyone is always trying to get the imagination station. They're like, ooh, it's free real estate. And then they, like, try and murder box everyone, like Novacom or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, like, you have the TV show, which even in that, he has, like, the dumb telephone box, like, imagination station in the basement.
Yep.
And he's like, I don't use this anymore, so we keep it in the basement. And then dumb little kids tumble into it, and then they go on an imagination station adventure they can't get out. Like, even if Wit is actively, like, not having his crap stolen and used against him, these dumb people going into Wit's End are just doing it to themselves.
It's like, don't worry, I'll just put it in the vast tunnel system underneath my building that no one knows about, and Blacker definitely couldn't have ever just, like, come in and just been, like, ganking my stuff out of.
Yeah, and then Nick and Erica, who hooked back up, are just walking through the tunnels, and then they fall in.
Yeah. So, yeah, Wit pretends to send them into the I was, at first, their mom, they were like, come on, Mom, come join us. And she's like, no, I get claustrophobic. And I was like, oh, she's actually not going in. And I felt disappointed because I always like it when adults get sucked into imagination station adventures. But it turns out that's not what this episode is.
I think that would have been, like, an interesting episode, though.
I do like how Bridget was like, no, this is weird and creepy. Like,
no, I would be on the same page as her, honestly.
Yeah. It's like, I get the concept, but you do realize, like, how weird this is, right? Like,
yeah, honestly, if I was them, I would not be okay with this. Like, I feel like a step worse than this would be, like, if their dad was dead and Wit was like, here, come into our imagination station. Oh, wait, Wit did that. It put him in a coma. He almost died.
I did think about that, about Immortal Coil in this episode. I was like, you can, like, interact with people that aren't around for you to, like, see them and hang out with, fake them. Like,
I'm, like,
Jenny or Tom.
I'm such a sucker for, like, the angst of, like, a character comes back or something like that, and they've been gone for a long time, and then just, like, everyone is happy, and then there's just this one person who's like, no, I am not okay with this. I need to deal with this. Like, Bridget in this episode, I thought was very realistic, very good. And, like, another really good example is another shout out to DuckTales, because DuckTales is great. I know we always say it, but, like, go watch DuckTales.
As Louis, I'm about to spoil.
Yeah, season 2 spoilers. Louis in season 2 for the entire second half, like, and how he acts towards Della was excellent. Yeah. Chef's kiss, so good.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the real dad, which I was like, okay, apart from, like, the brief deception of, like, massive emotional manipulation, it was actually a very clever and cute way to, like, surprise his family about being home.
It really reminded me of, like, when you watch videos like that on YouTube of, like, soldiers coming home and just pranking people.
So, like you said, Wit starts being, like, weird. He's, like, an hour late for work, and he wouldn't tell Connie where he was. And at first, I thought it was, like, he was trying to, like, teach Connie a lesson about something, because I just was hit with extreme, like, between you and me vibes, where Wit was, like, abandoning Connie in order to make a point about how she was prioritizing Mitch too highly in her life. But this time he was just, like, outright keeping secrets. So I'm like, maybe it's not about Connie, and maybe he is just actually hiding something.
Yeah.
We finally got a last name for Wyatt and his family, and we got first names for both of his parents. So
when we
nice.
When we were getting the names, I was listening to this episode, I was thinking about what you said last time. I was thinking, like, Devin's gonna be so happy. We know their last name, it is Perkins.
Yeah, I realized because in playing
Anne's
Fate,
last name was Perkins too. No, that's Parks and Rec. Never mind.
Yeah. Were you thinking of Anne Jacobs?
I was thinking, like, that's not Dale's last name. Why would that be Anne's last name?
Anne Perkins. Um, she is
You can't say her name without saying it the way that he
she is
does.
literally Ann Perkins. Um,
Oh, I love what's his
Chris
Chris. His name
Traeger.
is Chris.
I'm so glad that you finally watched Parks and Rec.
Do you think that's ever confusing? Because like Chris Pratt, Chris in the show, it must have been mixed. I bet there were some mix-ups at some point.
Maybe. Um,
Um, I still really want to watch the quarantine special.
yeah, I
I have to
know.
figure out
I
how to
need to
get a
look
hold of
around
that.
again to see if I can find it anywhere. Anyways, yeah. In playing favorites, that was the second episode. Wyatt's dad appeared, so I like gave him a playlist in my iTunes, and I just had to call it Wyatt's dad, and I was like, this is the first time that we've gotten like a second episode for a parent where I don't know their first name or their last name, so I can't call him like Mr. something, and I can't just call him
Mr.
yeah,
Dad.
Mr. Wyatt's father, sir. Um, yeah, and then I changed that obviously because yeah, we got first and last names, so they're more cementing in definitely Wyatt's family. I mean, they had 2 episodes this season.
It's like Sir from a series of unfortunate events. That's his whole name.
Uh huh. Yeah, so Wyatt is packing in all of these holidays in different ways. They like drop a melon to be like the New Year's ball, and then they're like Colonel Sanders' birthday. And I was like, can they just say Colonel Sanders like that? Like no parody name?
Is that allowed?
I was like, I guess they can, especially because he was a real person, but like it still feels wrong to hear that.
Hello, focus. You can't just do that.
It's Warner. Mr. Media? So yeah, we find out it's Tom's birthday, which is very sad. I was like, Whit has so many sad days on his calendar at this point.
I was thinking like we still haven't gotten any mention of either Maud or like
Bernard.
Bernard. So that theory that Wellington and Bernard are just traveling the world together still holds up.
Maud and Bernard just retired to Florida, and they're just at that pool, and Maud has just been doing cannonballs for the last decade and a bit.
And Bernard's just been having really bad cell reception for the last decade.
It's weird to me that Walker Edmiston died in 2007 or 2008, probably 2007, and then the show didn't address his character being gone for 10 years, and then they're like, okay, now it's time to acknowledge that Tom is like passed away, and then like multiple times.
Do you want the serious answer or the joke answer?
The serious answer. Why?
Okay, serious answer is maybe it was too soon for them and too emotional and too hard. So they didn't want to do it and they wanted to wait a respectable amount of time. Funny answer, maybe they didn't get the memo and they just thought he was ghosting them.
But I mean, it's not like obviously. I mean, obviously they couldn't work around it any other way. But when Hal passed away, it's not like, hey, we just don't mention Whit not being around for 10 years. Like that would be weird.
I mean, it's not like with Whit, he's like basically the main character.
I know. It's
with Tom, you have like a ton of like times early on when Walker was alive for like the first 49-ish albums, where like he's not around for very large periods of time.
I know.
So
it's strange that if you wait, like I get that they don't say anything about it because most of the time when adult characters leave, they don't address it. It's weird that after a decade, they were like, okay, now we're going to acknowledge that Tom died. And I'm sure a large part of that was because they wanted to figure out a way to like work in like, oh, we're going to bring in Tom's sister and we have like, you know, the Kennedy sisters and we want them singing as the Westcott girls. And because of the style of the music, it just makes sense. We're going to like tie in Tom's farm and stuff. So we need to acknowledge that.
But like the thing that weirds me out is the fact that they haven't mentioned anyone else, only Walker.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. They wait so long. and that they acknowledge one character and they still haven't talked
Yeah.
about any of the other ones. That's what makes it so weird.
Like, they haven't talked about Alan Young. They haven't talked about... I'm really sorry, I can't remember Joanne's voice actress's name.
Judith. Is it? It's Judith something. Because that's her middle name.
Judith... Oh, no, wait. Janet Waldo.
Yeah, it was a J name. I know it was a J name.
And they haven't talked about our boy, who is the entire reason that I watched The Partridge Family. My brain is so tired. What?
Dave Madden.
Thank you, Dave Madden.
Dave Madden. AIOU, AIOU.
25 red balloons.
99?
99 red balloons.
Okay.
98.
So, yeah, it was an unexpected episode, but it was very nice. It was very touching. Conceptually, like, I liked Whit's point about, like, the value of just spending time with the people that you love, even if it doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be meaningful. And obviously we've touched on this before with Wooten and Connie talking about Mitch, and she was talking about Eugene in Plan B. The way that Whit frames it, I thought was particularly funny. Like, conceptually, a very touching kind of thing to say of, like, Jesus spent his last free night eating dinner with his friends. It's like, oh, that's sweet. I mean, it was Passover Seder. Like, he didn't really have a choice in that evening being a large social meal.
They called Jesus up and they're like, hey, Jesus, are you going to come to Passover with us? He's like, I guess.
Yeah, it's not like he chose to have a big social dinner that night. It's literally, like, the law.
Do you think, like, he called all his friends up? They're like, thanks for inviting us to your Passover feast. And he's, like, eating bread. And he's like, there's Passover? I thought that was Saturday.
The funny implication is the fact that they weren't even having dinner at Jesus' house. So, anyways, yeah, it was like, I mean, technically not really, like, the point that Whit is trying to make here, but if we can ignore that, like, yes, it is a nice sentiment that he is sharing nonetheless.
I thought it was, like, a really sweet episode. It kind of reminds me, like, emotional beat-wise of, like, I think their last name was Millers?
The Myers?
Myers, thank you. Myers episodes, early on with, like...
dealing with Ernie coming out of jail.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And my boy, what was his name? Eric, thank you. And Brooke was the daughter.
Yeah.
Why can't I remember her name and not anyone else's in that family?
I don't know. Yeah, the end was really nice, and then we had, like, the very last scene, the scene with Whit and Connie. The score, it's interesting because this episode was scored by a name with which I was not familiar. It was not John Campbell, or even Jared DePascal, or that, like, guy who did some other episodes way back when. I don't know if he's done any other episodes, but it's interesting because the song in the very last scene sounds almost identical to the, like, the golden era, like, the sad music, the piano, like,
yeah.
da-da-da. Like, it starts with the same 3 notes in the same octave on a piano, and then it has, like, the same chord progression, but it's not playing the same notes. And I was like, I don't know if he's intentionally trying to, like, do a rework of that song.
And you know what? I've said it before. I liked that song. It worked. It made me even more emotional.
Yeah, because I heard that, and I'm like, oh.
The music in this episode was really good.
Because when I hear that song, it brings me back to, like, Kurt at Trickle Lake trying to fish, and Whit finding out that this is the last time he's going to ever talk to Jenny, and, like, every scene where that song is
the stuff with the Myers when they have, like, they find out they're going to get Christmas presents for the first time since, like, their dad went to jail, and it's like, my heart.
Sad.
And Connie having to break up with Jeff,
Yeah.
And she's like, but I love him and
Um,
stuff.
I was thinking too, like, this is very emotional. And I don't know who all in entirety was like in the studio when this was being recorded, but I'm sure for like Katie especially and Nathan as well, who was directing
Mm-hmm.
it, that it would have been very emotional, having this moment in memory of Walker, who is, especially for Katie, who's been around since the beginning of the show with him for like almost 20 years.
I thought this was handled really well. Also, I thought it was interesting because again, our predictions and us mentioning things before they happen. We were
Yes, it
talking
was more
about
than 20
like
years, really.
we were talking about the Rathbones,
Uh huh.
like a couple episodes ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost made a comment about like Tom and Walker and how I miss Bart and stuff and Tom, and then this happened.
Yeah, it was very unexpected when Whit revealed like that was why he was sad.
I'm surprised that like they didn't dedicate this episode to Walker, but they
Yeah, I
did
mean they usually.
dedicate like episodes in album 50 to him.
Yeah,
Do you think
it
like every time they mention Tom, they just like rededicate the episode?
it
He has like 10 episodes dedicated to him.
they usually do that like the first episode that comes out after someone passes away. It would be weird to do that 10 years after the fact,
Yeah.
like 13 years after the fact.
And fans listening to the show, they're like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they like address it in this very kind of like a way where it's not relying on you having the knowledge because as you're like they're people who are in the age demographic, the upper age demographic of this show, who weren't even born when Walker Edmiston died.
That's so weird to think about. Do you
Yeah,
think there are like kids who listen to like post hiatus stuff
and
and
I've
then they
never
start
heard
getting
before.
into like the backlog and then they are like, wait, Tom's a real character?
Maybe I mean they wouldn't recognize like anyone.
Yeah. Like, man, I wish I didn't know it was going to happen with Eugene and Katrina. That was us.
Yeah,
Welcome to the party, kids.
yeah.
Welcome to the knowing too much party.
I wish
kids.
I didn't know that Mitch was actually alive.
People going back, Connie's like, I'm going to marry Mitch. And they're like, no, you're not.
So that was this episode. Yeah, definitely like hit some very strong emotional notes. This obviously, especially because they brought the Tom stuff up, so it pulled like a lot of nostalgia strings. And because it's not just talking about a character death, but like an actual real life person death.
Did this episode make you cry?
It did not.
I didn't think so.
I'm going to give it 4.4.
Oh, I don't know what to give it. I don't know what to give it.
Well, figure it out.
What if I said no and then I hung up? I'm gonna give it a 4.2. I don't know why I'm taking marks off. I don't really have an explanation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a theme that we've seen before, and like, I'm glad that we're fleshing out Wyatt's family more. I'm still not like the most crazy fond of them, but I'm glad that they're building.
I like them. They're growing on me
They're
a lot,
building up
especially
more
Wyatt and Bridget.
what they got going on and stuff. This was only Wyatt's 6th episode, which was wild to me.
He's definitely making like a big impression, but I think
like
that's mainly because
appearance.
he's in like the core album episodes,
Yeah,
more so than the OAC.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at least half of those episodes were in the AIOC last year because he was in the Camp 2-parter, and then he was in. Wait, no, he wasn't in Lifted Up. mixing up him and Buddy because I listened to that at the same time I was listening to
Wyatt
Playing
and Buddy
Favorites.
are very similar in my mind, so like I can't blame you.
Well, because I was getting ready for the reviews for Playing Favorites and lifted out of context at the same time. So I keep on.
I want more content with Zoe and Buddy. Like, they were kind of set up as like something going on between them. I don't care if it's romantic or not. I just want to see them interact again as friends.
Like the heart transplant episode. That was them both.
Like the one that made Jay start thinking that they're a thing, which I think was Snow Day. Not the Snow Day one, like the Snow Day clone.
Yeah, I forgot about that episode.
Yeah.
Snow Day 2.
Snow Day Part 2.
Snowy Boogaloo. Whatever it was
Electric Igloo.
Boo-Gigloo. That's much better than what I had. Okay, time to talk about the finale. It's a weird one. So let's get on to that now. So, episode 885, Further from the Truth, written by Bob Hoose and Phil Lawler. You know what this episode reminds me of, kind of? It reminds me of, was it the December episode for last, 2018? Where it was, Eugene on the ocean with Wooten and Wit. And then
oh my gosh, you're right.
At the very end of the episode, it's like, surprise, it was the Imagination Station.
You're right. That's such an apt comparison. That's probably the best one we're gonna
And then we're
have.
like, well, that was weird. I don't know how to feel now. And I mean, this wasn't as kind of emotionally jarring as all of that, definitely, but...
No, that was emotional whiplash. It was like, whoa, Wooten's gonna get eaten by a whale! And then it's like, oh, and Eugene's like, the emotional burdens of my troublesome life, and you're like, holy crap, what is happening?
Yeah. So what happens in this episode, Victoria?
Can you recap this one? I was so ding-dang confused. I've listened to this episode 3 and 7.5 times. I will get to how that makes sense.
I understand what you mean. At first I thought it was hyperbole, but if you're saying that is serious, then I understand.
No, I had
listen to the second half 7 times.
I'll just say it really quick. I listened to this one back to back with the other one.
Yeah.
So I was still doing crafts, and there were points where my coworker was talking to me, and I had to rewind and stuff. And so there were points. Oh yeah, the thing was, I was editing while I was listening to both of these episodes. So
editing what?
I was editing the craft videos that we put out. So I just got a new phone. I don't have a normal cord thing. So I can't listen to things on my phone and charge my phone at the same time.
Thanks,
and I
Apple.
needed to have my phone hooked up. So I was listening to the episodes off of iTunes. And because of that, I couldn't mute iMovie. So there was music. So I was listening to scrubbed through music while listening to the episode, which kind of a little bit took away some of the emotional beats when Whit was like, I'm crying because Tom is dead. And I just, my scrubber froze. And I was just sitting there staring at the computer. And so the same thing happened with this, where the scene, I'm assuming you did the same thing I did here, where Eugene is talking to Emily and Maury and Suzu, and you can hear bells in the background. Did you notice that?
Bells?
Oh, okay. I'll get to that. Okay. I'll get to that later. Okay, basically, long story short, for the first little chunk of the conversation that he has with them at Campbell College, about 1 minute into the conversation, you can hear bells from the town clock in the background.
Okay.
And I noticed that several chimes in that the bells were going in the background. And I was like, oh, this is going to be important later.
It's no way in, no way
out. Yeah, exactly. The time, the ice cream truck phone kind of thing. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to need to know what time it is, because it's going to be an important clue that'll help us later. Mickey Mouse style. And so then I scrub back, and I had to scrub back a couple times because I kept on getting like distracted by the
Hmm.
video or people talking to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Maybe I should just listen to the episodes in a different environment. Not gonna do that.
Maybe so.
Um, and so it took me like 3 tries, but there were 11 tolls, so it was 11 a.m. And I was like, this is going to be really important. And I listened to the episode again today because I listened to the episode two or 3 days ago for the first time.
Uh-huh.
And so I listened to it again today. And when I did, I made sure I recounted. I was right. It was 11. And it just made it even worse listening to it the second time, knowing that I put all that time and effort into figuring out how many bells were tolling in the background because
It
that
says
never
nothing
comes
to,
up
if
at
anything.
all. You didn't even notice that there were bells tolling
Did
in
you
the
say they
background
came
at
back in the last scene, though?
No.
Oh, I thought
The
you were saying
bells
it
were
happened in the first conversation with Eugene, but then it,
No, it
like...
happened like in the last scene. So I was thinking like maybe the bells were gonna like come back later in the episode, and you'd be like, "Oh, there's a time discrepancy," or Emily would be like, "You said this happened at 3
Yeah, yeah,
p.m.,
yeah.
but we were with Eugene at 11." And then,
Or it's like, because that's like where everything start. So that scene...
no, that's not where everything started going weird.
Okay.
Yeah, because Emily said that she was talking to Wit, so that means half of the first scene is real. So as soon as Maury comes in, that's when everything starts going fake. When like Maury comes in and Wit leaves.
At the beginning of the episode, you mean?
Yeah, I think. So.
Okay, I couldn't figure out on re-listen.
Because I figured that out when I was re-listening to it today. Because remember how I said I listened to it like 2 and 7
We
half
should say
times?
what happens in the episode first.
Yeah, like from Eugene on. So there's like 3 scenes after. So there's the Eugene scene, there's the scene at Wit's End, and then there's the scene at the real Wit's End. And those scenes, I was so confused listening to them that I listened to all those scenes over and over and over again, probably about like 4 times each before I finished listening to the episode for the second time today. Okay, say what the episode is about.
So Emily is like in a slump, and she's like, I've been avoiding Matthew, and he wants to talk to me, but like I feel weird about like all the stuff that went down because he doesn't like, he hates me now, I guess, but like I know that I'm just being unreasonable because I'm angry at him for not wanting to mystery with me anymore, and I'm still trying to figure out why like the escape room stuff happened. And then this like mystery kind of drops itself into her lap that Maury just insists on tagging along on, and like drags Suzu into it as they like go from clue to clue to clue. And it sounds like it's involving Matthew, and maybe it's from Matthew, but no one knows where he is, and he's like disappeared. And things seem to get like more and more drastic. And then finally it culminates in Wit delivering an envelope that's like, Matthew being, Emily, my family has been kidnapped by the guy who did the escape route. You need to
Please
rescue
send
me. I couldn't go.
$1,000 to the Serbian prince.
Like, I couldn't go to the police. And Emily's like, okay, like, stop it, Matthew. And then Matthew
And Emily's just so apathetic for the whole episode. Honestly, it was delightful. I loved it.
I know, I'm glad, because I was also like...
Mm-hmm.
And so I was glad that it was the same thing as Writer's Roots, where she's like, I can already see that this is a fake mystery. Like,
and like the entire time, Maury was like, "Wow, you're so smart.
Especially,
you're so cool. By the way, this huge number divided by this times this, and the square root of this is this." And Emily's like, "Holy crap!" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm really smart too, but you're so much smarter than me."
Also, like the utter cheesiness of like, when Emily reads the letter and everyone's like, oh no, oh my. And they're so like campy about it. So she's like, come on. Like, Matthew, I know you're behind this, and then she's also like, this doesn't make sense. Computer and program, obviously this is the imagination station and nothing happens. But then everyone...
And then Maury has this, like Eugene and Maury have these lines where Eugene says, and I quote, "Oh, wait, you think you're in the imagination station?" Or like, or like she thinks she's in an imagination station program. And Maury says, and I quote, "It happens to the best of us." So, John Avery Whittaker, let's have a talk. Let's have a talk
This was
about
like
how this is
double
a common
gaslighting
enough
to Emily.
phenomenon that people are like having crises where they think they're in the
That's what I'm
imagination
saying.
station program, and like they're just like, oh, I think like how many times does a kid run into Wits End and just jump on top of the counter and yell, "The program is on," and then everyone just stares at them and are like, "Get off the counter, this is real."
It's like it could result in something dangerous, like
Yeah,
someone
so like
doing
that's what we were talking about in the review right before this
someone
one.
doing something bad because they don't realize that this is real life. Like, you know what it's also like? It's like the last season of The Good Place where Simone was like, "This isn't real. This is just a figment of my imagination."
Honestly, I did not like Simone. I thought that was very annoying. Her doing that lasted for a very long time.
It was reasonable.
That was probably... It is reasonable, but like, I got real tired of it real quick. She was probably my... I don't know, one of my least favorite things about the last
You
season.
watched the blooper reel that I sent you?
I haven't. I was really busy. I was at work when you sent it to me, so I forgot to watch it.
Yeah, so just further establishments. I mean, I think the earliest example of this kind of thing happening is another example where it was very important, because it was young Jimmy Barkley being like, this is fine, this is cool, I'm in the imagination station.
Boy, you're dead.
He's like, this is cool, I don't need to worry about it, it's just a fun, happy adventure, and I don't...
Jimmy's like, I think I'll jump out of this airplane, and his guardian angel's like, please don't.
Yeah, because he was in a coma on the verge of death. So,
this is a great adventure, Mr. Whittaker.
So anyways, finally, like, everything starts, like, breaking down like Five Nights at Freddy. That's why when you talked about the bells, I was suddenly like, what if Maury programmed in, like, a kind of Cinderella reference where it's like you hear, like, 11 chimes of the bell, and then at midnight, like, everything starts, like, glitching out as the program decays. Like, the characters...
See, I kept on listening for more bells, but like,
yeah, you said it's
I couldn't hear them.
That's not
and
it.
Then I was thinking, like, there has to be a reason that these I got like Brian David Gilbert. I was like, there has to be a reason, otherwise they wouldn't have put this in.
Did you see there was no reason.
I've watched it, and it put me on a binge of watching a bunch of other Unravels. I've been watching Unraveled and TikToks all night before you called me.
Yesterday, I saw him tweet last night that today he'd be posting an Unraveled that he's been working on for over a year.
Yep. Have you seen it yet?
No, but I know it's about reading the Halo novel, so I assume that's why it took so long. It was just
there's like 31 books, and he doesn't read a lot.
I knew there was a lot of them, but that is a lot. Anyways,
all of them. I could do that in under a year.
The program decays, but interestingly, it turns out she wasn't exactly in the imagination station. It turns out that Kelkun and Kanu has jury-rigged a, like, portable, like, brain, literally like a Nova box, combining the portable imagination station technology into, like, a box that can just hijack someone's brain as they're just, like, out in the world. And
she was just standing in front of the sink in Wits End, just probably, like, jaw open, just eyes wide staring forward, which is like horrific image.
So you're saying that he spilled it on her to send her into the kitchen, into, like, the effective radius of the machine? Is that what?
Oh my gosh, that's probably what happened.
So okay, because
like, if you think about it, Whit left the room. So in the last scene, it's really hard to figure out when it happened.
Because I was like if she was by the sink, it must have been that. But when I re-listened, I couldn't hear any definitive, like, clue. It's like, in Bernard and Eugene's Road Trip, and It Happened at Four Corners, if you listen closely, once you know what's going on at the beginning, there's a very faint, like flashback or story time chime in the background when it transitions to, like,
but it's like so subtle you might not notice it.
You wouldn't notice it.
You know what happened? That first scene when Emily was just like, oh, I'm just gonna leave, you spilled milkshake all over me. She was like, oh, I need to go wash this off.
Yeah.
And then that's when it cut to her being at school the next day.
Yes.
So what would have happened is Maury spilled his drink on her. So she would go into
The kitchen.
the room with the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then it was like on top of the kitchen, like right in front of the sink.
Yeah.
So he would have got her like seconds after that scene ended.
Yeah, and so because I was like,
okay, that makes a lot more sense.
It does, because when I re-listened to it, I wanted to try and figure out like,
because when it was like you were at the sink, and I was like, why was she at the sink?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, she was at the sink at the beginning, so was the beginning of the episode real? So when I re-listened to it, I tried to hear if you can like figure out what happened, but I couldn't figure it out because I was like, oh, she's gonna go to the sink, so that would make sense, or we're gonna like hear some kind of clue or some, some kind of thing. Did Maury come in after her? But as soon as she went in, it was just a school, and I was like, oh, that was weird. But you're right, it was probably, it's like a dream. It's like she walked in, and then suddenly she was like, oh, I'm at school, and forgets about like the gap.
And honestly, that makes so much more sense because.
So that's because as I was listening, I was like, why is he?
That makes everything make sense. Because Whit said like Eugene and Matthew were helping with this thing yesterday, and then Whit at the end, which is what confused me originally. Whit and like Emily said that they were talking about Matthew earlier that day.
Yeah.
And so when she goes to school, that's supposed to be the next day.
Yeah.
And so that's what messed with her.
That
with
also
Eugene,
confused me too.
Who was like, we were, because I didn't pick that like up on that until the second listen of the episode, and subsequently like the, I don't know, 9th listen of the scene with Eugene, just trying to figure out what was going on. This episode is very confusing. If you can't figure that out,
we're putting pieces together. Like in real time, which is
you need a whole other person to figure out what's happening in this episode to help you.
See, the first time I listened to it in the first scene, because we have like Maury spills the drink upstairs, which pulls Whit away, and then he spills it on Emily, and it's like, well, obviously he did that on purpose. And she's like, I need to go into the kitchen, and so I assumed like, oh, he's gonna follow her in after her, so he has some excuse to like get behind the scenes and then do something sneaky, or he's gonna like look around, do something, but then the scene cut away, and so it's like, what was the point of that? But it makes sense that this machine would have like an effective range, and he also needed to get her somewhere out of eyesight, so it'd take time. And that's probably the 10 minutes was the time it took for Whit to clean it and then get back down, come into the kitchen, and see Emily just like standing there.
And that makes a lot of sense, because I was thinking like, if this happened in 10 minutes, like the fact that it was apparently one day where she was at Wits End, and then the day where she was like at school, at the college.
Well, I don't think the rest of that day happened for her at all, right? It's like a dream.
No, exactly. That's why I'm saying, like, if it went from like dream logic, where in a dream you go from one scene to another, and your brain fills in the gaps, so you think that like hours have passed.
Yeah.
So that means like she goes in there, she immediately is at school, and then as soon as she's done talking to Suzu and Maury, she's immediately at the college. And then she immediately gets launched back to Wits End. So I totally understand how that would take 10 minutes.
A lot in one day, like, but it's because there was no like she was in dream logic.
Yeah. So like that actually checks out. This episode makes so much more sense, like actually having it mapped out to you, than it does just listening to it for the first time.
Which is the point. I mean, I did.
This episode got like really spooky, like at the end where their voices were echoing. Yeah. I was listening to it the first time. I was like, what is happening?
It was very like hide and seek, like glitching out on her. And I mean, my mind,
I was imagining like she looks at them like they don't have faces anymore. It's just like no skin, like the pale man basically, except for no mouth.
And like my mind also went back to like the case of the disappearing Hortons, because they're like, the door was unlocked and the Parkers are just gone. Like, because even if Matthew was, like, setting up some prank, I don't think he would be able to convince his whole family to get in on, like, tricking Emily to where he's like, hey, let's all go leave the house for this amount of time. You're going to pull us out of school. You're not going to tell the school what's going on. We're going to leave the door unlocked. Like, there's no way David and Ava would be on board with that. So I was like, how does that all work out?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, this is so stupid. Like, Matthew's in this much trouble, but he would give an envelope to Whit.
Well, I didn't believe that part for a second.
To give an envelope to Emily. And also, like, I was so confused the first time listening to this. I didn't even know what was going on with this. It was literally like, I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Oh, it's Matthew. Oh, it's not Matthew. What?
Well, here's the thing. The title of the episode is Further from the Truth, which suggests that at the end of this episode, Emily is going to reach a conclusion about things that is even further away from Maury than where she was before. And so I was continually pulled back and forth between, is this actually Matthew or is it Maury? Because in either situation, something's going to happen where, whether it's because Maury manipulated it or not, everything Emily is trying to investigate, Maury is going to throw suspicion even farther away from himself, and he's going to send Emily chasing down an entirely wrong path.
Like, I'm really trying to figure out what Maury's goal is here. Because in some aspects, I feel like he's kind of helping people.
He is.
In, like, a weird, twisted way.
We'll get to that at the end.
But, like, also there's, like, this whole, like, Xehanort kind of thing he's doing, where he's like, oh, I'm separating you from your friends. Like, Xehanort with Sora in Dream Drop in KH3 is like, I'm taking this person, I'm separating them from their friends, and, like, creating a barrier between them in a way. And then, the person is like, yeah, I'm gonna be okay without my friends as long as I can do this, this, and this. And then they just kind of get torn down, and they're like, no, you're not okay without your friends. You're nothing without your friends. You need them. And that's kind of where Emily is right now. And, like, that's not a good place to be. I'm not saying she was in a good place at the beginning of this episode, but, like, she's just equally not in a good place now, and she, like,
oh, this is the bad place.
She's in a good place. Oh, this is the bad place. Yeah, so, man, Maury and Sean, imagine if they teamed up. That would be a nightmare. Maury's a little gremlin boy who's like the demon spawn of Blackguard and Bennett Charles teaming up and doing all these evil little hoaxes and making Nova boxes. So, like, Maury, I saw this post, and I thought about it, and I forgot to mention it to you. There's a post about My Little Pony. I saw it a couple months ago. I guess, like, in the later seasons, Chrysalis comes back, which I did know, and then that, like, Minotaur-looking guy...
Iron Bull or T-Rock? T-Rex.
T-Rock, yeah, he comes back, and they
I thought you meant Iron Bull, like the strength training guy.
No, I'm like with this little pony who's like 5 or something like that, and she's like one of the villains later on. This was after we stopped watching, but she's like one of the villains later on. She's like younger than Apple Bloom or something like that. Yeah, she's basically like if Diamond Tiara was evil, and apparently her whole deal is she's a villain because she's really racist. And so I saw this post, and it was like, man, getting to the end of My Little Pony, and your villain is like a evil witch demon that sucks out love, literal hellspawn that like feeds off of everyone's magic and tears them apart, and a little kid racist. And I was thinking, like, you have Odyssey's main villains, you have Blackguard, like this evil villain who's like Maleficent incarnate, just like all this evil, and you have Bennett Charles, like a mastermind who's pulling all these corporate strings and trying to enslave humanity. And then you just have this little evil twink who's just trying to ruin everyone's lives with this little squeaky boy.
So, to finish up our summary of the episode... I'm
not wrong, though, right?
After Emily is finally pulled out of it, she's like, I know who it is. And then we cut to a very, like you could cut the tension with a knife kind of scene.
I was listening to this just cringing, like, I don't like these vibes.
With Maury and Suzu, it's very bad vibes. Talking to each other and
I could, like, feel the bad vibes.
Yeah, it's just this very kind of, like, hostile side-eye talking in code kind of
and Maury's just, like, flipping through a book. He's like, Japanese is such a beautiful language. Pity you can't read it. And Suzu's like, you might learn one day, brother.
When you're
ready. Like, good. Yeah, when you're... What does that mean? What does that mean? I'm starting, like, Suzu, the way she talked about kidnapping for a second, she was like, why a program about kidnapping? For a second, I was like, do you guys have a past that has to do with, like, being kidnapped or something like that? Or are you just saying, like, in general, that's a horrible thing? I don't know. I thought she said that line weirdly. I was thinking, like, if Maury has this thing where, like, in his backstory, he was kidnapped at one point, like, and I
Well,
don't.
we know something happened in their past
Something
before they moved to
happened to
Odyssey.
mess this kid
Well,
up,
no, I
and
mean they
he's
actually
just.
say that in their first episode, like Suzu and Mori in their first
Oh, what did they say?
conversation, like because the end of the first episode that has both of them, I think it's the key suspect.
Oh,
Um,
like, what did you do this
and
time,
they
brother, or
reveal at
whatever?
the end in like a scene with just the two of them in their house, and that's when we're first like, oh, this is really interesting because Suzu reveals that she's like, oh yeah, I knew it was you the whole time, but I didn't tell on you,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, this is an interesting dynamic, and she was like,
Like, I don't know what Suzu's deal
and
is.
she was
I
like, what are
like
you
her
up
a
to? And he
lot,
was like,
but,
oh,
like,
nothing, and she was like,
there's something
she
going
says something
on.
like, I hope this isn't going to be a repeat of what happened in our last town or something like that.
Like, does Maury kidnap people regularly and just, like, use them as little guinea pigs in, like, his evil machination mazes or
Okay,
something like
let's
that?
so
Like, what is his deal? I kind of feel like he's, I guess Xehanort's like a good comparison again because he was, I don't know, I kind of got the vibe that like he's trying in the most twisted imaginable way to like help people
I
in
did
some way
this episode is
because
the first
everything he's
time.
doing is just really affirming everyone. Like he did it, he keeps on doing it with Emily, he did it with Matthew, and he like did it with Olivia. I don't freaking know how Olivia is supposed to counter into any of this.
I think it
I
was
don't know
just
what's going
another
on.
pawn in his plan. We'll talk about it at the end. Let's save to the end where we talk about like just Maury
Like,
theories in general because we're going to be reviewing the album.
also, I feel like he wanted Emily to know it was him.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we
Like,
acknowledged that from the very beginning. That was one of the things about in that review of the key suspect that helped me realize who he was supposed to be because I asked you, who is a character who foils like a great literary detective who's super brilliant and their whole passion is like, I need this great detective to like see me and recognize me. I need them to know it was me because I need them to like challenge me and validate me. I need to like constantly dropping hints so that they're on my tail, so that there's like this back and forth and tete-a-tete because I need like the
I mean, like, the
challenge.
funny thing is with Moriarty, he's only in one Sherlock book.
Yeah, I know.
He was just, like, the closest that ever got close to, like, beating Sherlock.
Except for
A
Irene Adler.
scrub might say, because if someone actually knows the lore,
Yes.
they know that Irina Adler,
I was gonna say, what are you
who's
talking
also
about?
only in one book, beats Sherlock. And at the end of that book, he's like, you know what? She deserves it. Good for her. And like the gall of people to make Irene Adler his love interest in like adaptations that we have nowadays. I see that and I'm like, get out of here with that nonsense. Irina is like a happily married woman in the books. And the reason why she goes to Sherlock in the first place is to like get help with her husband who's being blackmailed or something like that. Because she like loves him so much. And I'm like, the disrespect to treat her like this in BBC Sherlock and the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock movies. How dare they?
So, we start off this episode where Emily is just like, all I've been thinking about is trying to solve this mystery. I think Whit says it's the first time that he's seen her since that happened, which
Girl, same. I haven't seen you either.
which suggests that either these albums are taking place quite close to each other, or Emily
I
has
think they are.
been pinned up in her bedroom for the last 6 months, like just
Just like with
pinning
a corkboard
and string. Yeah.
I should say, I before we listened to 69, which might as well say this is where it's heading.
Obviously.
Yeah.
You all know that at this point. You've seen the album cover. You've seen the title
Y'all have
of the
probably
first 3
listened to
episodes.
69. We haven't yet. Good for you. I hope you like it so far. I think I'm going to re-listen to all the Maury episodes
That's a wise idea.
before 69 because I want to like
Find all
I
those
wanna
clues. Get them
figure out
all
what's
fresh in your
happening.
mind.
because lots of these Maury episodes,
They're one a season, so
like the escape room episode, it's been a year, y'all,
yeah.
since I listened to that.
So I'm glad that the next like Maury centric episode, which I knew this one would be because I knew there was a Maury episode in this album and it's the finale, that it was immediately like building on talking about what happened last time, because it would be absurd for Emily and Whit to be talking about anything else than, hey, remember when that like when Jigsaw locked us in your basement and tried to like kill us?
It'd be so funny if Whit was like,
Oh yeah.
no, I don't actually.
If that happened to me, that is the only thing I would talk to other people about for the rest of my life. Like, I would
Yeah.
milk that story until my deathbed if that had happened to me. So I'm glad that the first time we see Emily after that, that's what she's talking about.
I kind of got the vibe in like past episodes, and especially in this episode, that Maury wants Emily and Suzu to team up, because
Yes.
I think, and I kind of think that's going to happen in the opening of the next episode, because Emily doesn't have a partner anymore.
Yeah.
And he's put her in a position where she's like, I need a partner. And in this episode, Matthew was like, I really want you to team up with someone, only I don't want it to be me.
Mm-hmm.
So he's definitely like trying to get Emily and Suzu to team up,
and I
because he
theorized
knows he can control Suzu because he has something on her. Because otherwise, like, I'm sure she loves her brother, which is great. It's great if you love and care about your sibling. I love you, Devin, even though you don't love me and you didn't answer my happy Friendship Day text messages I sent you this morning. And like, I think that's great. That being said, if you were committing these crimes, I would get them to throw you in jail. I would not hesitate. Like, I would not back you on this. I will not hesitate. Like, especially to this level. Like, well, maybe, I don't know, you did one crime, I would be like, understandable. You did this many, I would do something. But like, he has to have something on her, right? Like, to get her to stop doing it.
Thing.
She's like known since the beginning that
she's known since before the beginning. And I think in that episode, after we first saw that scene, I compared the two of them to like a very Good Omens kind of vibe, where it's like, oh, he's evil and she's good, but they're both very kind of like,
he's the messy one.
Yeah, they're both very much just kind of like sitting back and sipping tea while they watch the chaos going on, and they're both like influencing it, but they both know what the other's doing, and they're not adversarial towards each other, and they're just kind of both treating it like a plaything. Even it's more like villains and heroes in like a Taz graduation kind of sense.
Yeah,
where, like,
I agree.
They're both just kind of putting on a stage show, and they're treating everyone else as like
it's
their
like
plaything.
It's like wrestlers not in the ring.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just like, oh, we're just manipulating everyone else for our own entertainment, and like we're both playing roles, but like we're not adversarial to each other. It's like we're playing chess with real people. Like, we're this very sick and twisted kind of...
Zane or Nair kiss at the beginning of KH3, except for if they knew they were actually playing with lives on stake. So, like, I just want to say, hot take, I kind of think Suzu is as bad as Maury.
That's what I'm saying.
Because she is enabling him.
I don't think
and
that
even if
she's
you don't
being
want to say
like,
she's enabling him,
I don't think she's being
not
blackmailed.
Doing anything against him. Like, she's probably not being blackmailed. Like, maybe she is, maybe she's not. We don't know. She hasn't shown any indicator that she is. She probably would be more antagonistic towards him in private if she was being blackmailed. But, like, you would think, like, I don't know if she thinks, like, he's too, like, much of a outmatching her, that like he could do this and she couldn't stop him. But like, girl, you're an Odyssey. You've seen the kind of like nonsense that Whit has.
It's just like
he would be able to stop Maury. Maury's voice hasn't even changed yet. Like,
the conversations that they have with each other is just, it's so like, it's like you're listening. It's like you're watching a TV show where it's like these two like trillionaire children who have been raised in like a cutthroat business world, like having tea with their rival kind of thing, where they're like, you know, making these like saying these kind things that actually like are really like cutting remarks through 8 levels of
Mm-hmm.
like knowledge and like social criticism or something like
Like
that. Like,
ringing a bell. It's like, Papa, have the maid bring me an ice cream sandwich and a napkin. And you like eat it and you wipe your face with the napkin. You're like, oh, thank you, Papa. Ensure that the napkin is disposed of, and so is the servant that brought it to me. Like,
well, no, I mean it's like the way that they talk to each other. It's like that way where it's like, what can I think of? Like, you know, those kind of like Jane
you
Austen
know
like
that Vine?
backhanded compliments, kind of like.
Yeah. You know that Vine? There's just like, Sarah, those shoes look very familiar. Like, it's like that's the tone of voice they were using in the last scene
Yeah,
in
it's
this
just like,
episode.
oh, I okay. We keep. I want to talk about the end, and we keep on getting sucked into it. Emily at the beginning, she's talking to Wit, and we're acknowledging now that this part is a real conversation that's happening. Emily,
Can you imagine if it wasn't though? Emily like wakes up again. She's like, oh, that was awful.
Emily ponders why someone would want to trap her and Matthew in the room, thinking back to the station, and building on her discussion from last time. I'm still certain that Wit should believe 100% that this was aimed at him, not at them. And I still think, like, it's very clear that Maury set it up intentionally
No, I
to
think at
look,
this point, like with the writer's ruse thing, and
but they
like
don't know that's connected. And Maury
the
admitted writer's ruse was him. He came out and said, he's like, I
yeah,
designed a mystery for you. Here's
yeah,
the
and
thing.
Emily was like, it was a trash mystery, and he's like, oh, thank
They
you.
don't know that any of these other things that have gone on, because here's the thing, he's been playing it so slow, these were all spread out, none of them seem to have
He
any,
took actual real life human
none of
years. I want my money back no more.
none of them seem to have actual consequences. Like, he did the key suspect, which was a huge move on his part, but the way he did it, excuse me, he ended it so that it seemed like nothing really happened, because he opened everyone's locker, learned every dirty secret that everyone in the school had, but he closed them all and didn't take anything, so that everyone would be like, nothing was stolen. I guess it's fine. Same thing that happened with Eugene's phone in this episode, because he wanted them, like, he's playing these very low-key things, trying to make, like, not make any waves. He doesn't want anyone to know that anything is amiss. And so the escape room is on such a different caliber on every level that there's no reason in the world that they should be connecting
Maybe
that
that's like
to
part of
anything
why
else.
that episode like shook us so deeply,
Yeah,
is because he was playing it so close to the
he
chest,
went 0 to
and then he
60.
just
Yeah,
went completely like
he went
insane
in. He
in that
turned it up to
episode. And
11.
he's like, you know how I like open your like locker and then I close your locker just to like screw with you and stuff?
Now
I'm
I'm going
actually
to
gonna try and
kill
like
you.
straight up kill you in this episode.
Like, I'm going to torture you, and then I'm going to kill you after making you decide whether to sacrifice your life for your friend
I
or
feel like
not.
so bad at the end of that episode when Emily was like crying and she's like, I'm not okay. And I was like, Suzu is watching this
And
and
like I
she
said
could
last time,
say anything
I'm
and she's not.
I'm at least 60% sure that Suzu knows that it was Maury who did this specifically.
No, I definitely think that she knew it was Maury that did this.
Because the texts were sent to Suzu's phone.
Yeah. Like, Suzu was like, oh, sorry, my bad. I just give out my phone number to everyone I make eye contact with.
Anyways, so I'm still certain that Wit would believe that this was all aimed at him because Maury set it up that way. Like, the mysterious voice was all talking about, like, oh, like, look what I've done to your shop, Mr. Whitaker, and, like, all of these things. Like, it was all very aimed at Wit and made it seem like the fact that Emily and Matthew were the ones inside was just like, these kids just happened to be here. He didn't even use their names for a long time. He only
What
referred
a good episode.
he only referred to Wit by name and then only started referring to the kids by their names after they'd been using them to each other a lot. Like, it made it very clearly seem like this is some crazy, like, spy foreign intelligence person terrorist who is after Wit, which would make sense. And Maury made it look that way very convincingly. So Emily's like, I still don't know why someone would want to do it to that. And Wit's like, yeah, I can't figure it out either. And I was like, it's like, I wonder if Wit has tried to convince Emily that it was about him, or if he's allowing her to believe this was aimed at her because he doesn't want, like, her to know about, like, all his, like, weird past stuff. But the latter seems doubtful because it would be unnecessarily traumatizing for a kid to think that someone was, like, trying to kill them in that way, even though that does happen to be the truth here.
You mean like how Grady got like kidnapped and almost killed in album 50?
Exactly. Yes, exactly like that. Um, so yeah, I was very confused by the mystery, like you said, because I was constantly torn between like, is this Matthew? Is it Maury? Is it Suzu? It's a very strange mystery because everything was so centered around Matthew in ways that it seems like only Matthew should have access to in order to create it. And Emily acknowledged this, like especially like the Parkers are all gone without informing the school or locking their front door, which seems highly unlikely unless Matthew was behind the clues. Even then, still so.
I
However,
feel like Suzu has to get like really chewed out by the end of this. Like if she's not, I'm gonna be really upset.
unless
Unless
unless she decides to pull like a Maury, I can't believe you would do this. And like I was completely blindsided by all of this.
oh my gosh. Could you imagine Maury's reaction to that
No,
if she did that?
but what if then this happens and Maury, being as brilliant as he is, decides to go along with it because he knows that Suzu will like continue to like for he needs
Yeah,
someone on the
Suzu
outside.
will break him out of jail,
Yeah,
like small boy jail.
yeah. And he decides to go along with it. Curse you, Suzu, for foiling my plans.
Oh.
And then
And then in
she's the
album
real
100, they
mastermind.
come back and they blow up Wits End.
They fall.
Like their
They
grandfather Blackguard would have wanted.
Thank you for finishing my sentence.
You're welcome.
um,
Do you think like they would ever pull something
I
like that? Like we know Maury was adopted, right?
yes.
Yeah. Do you think like oh this is gonna happen and Suzu's gonna say like I'm so sorry he's adopted to like Wit or something like that?
Oh man.
Like, do you think their parents know? I'm imagining with like because Suzu said like oh we're gonna have to move again or something like that in
I
their first
have two
episode
theories.
together like you mentioned before. So like what I think is they got away with it, and by they I mean Maury, and Suzu figured out what Maury did,
Uh,
and she like helped cover it up, where she like stopped lots of like bad stuff from happening, but a lot of bad stuff still did happen.
uh,
But either they pinned the blame on someone else, or just Maury did, or they like just never figured out who it was, and then they convinced their parents to like move or something like that, or
yeah.
their parents were like, "This place is dangerous for our children. We need to move."
Yeah.
I want to meet their parents. I want to have a word with their parents.
Like I said, I think I said a while ago that for their parents, I was imagining like
Blackguard in a dress.
what's his face?
Which is just Regis.
What's his face? The rich duck boy from DuckTales.
Oh, you're imagining his parents?
Yeah.
As their parents?
That like their parents are just like whipping.
Oh, I know what his name is. What's his name?
Like the fancy rich boy who's like,
Tails,
Grandmama,
Birdie,
you must not disrespect her name.
Void. Doofus Drake.
Yes.
Is that? Yeah, that's his name.
The least
Yeah.
known Drake brother from the Uncharted franchise.
And with good reason, one might say.
Yeah, I imagine like that kind of scenario. Or I was actually thinking about this last night. What if their parents aren't in the picture at all? If they're dead,
I think I might have thought
or
about
they're
that
gone or
point.
something, and they're just living by themselves, and somehow they've managed to cover for the fact that their parents like don't exist, and it's just the two of them, and they've just been like,
which would really help them out
forging
if
signatures.
like they if Suzu or whoever became like in charge of the finances at the school or whatever, however that
the
episode
treasury,
with
yeah.
Emily ended, or not Emily, Olivia.
Uh-huh.
Man, I don't know what to make of that episode at all, because like they're like, oh yes, the pieces are all moving into place, and it's like you can tell that lots of Maury's battleground is gonna like happen involving the school or something like that. But like, how is Emily gonna play into this? Is she gonna be like in a C plot or something like that, and then gets dragged in mid part 2 or something?
Okay, so
or not Emily. I meant Olivia. Did I say Emily?
yes.
Yeah, I meant
That
Olivia.
makes more sense. I was like, I
It'd be
like.
so funny, like, Emily isn't even in
That's why
the
I was
finale.
laughing, because you're like, Emily's just going to be some C plot in Maury's grand plan. I was like,
It'd be
ouch.
so funny if they just deal with Maury off screen. And you know what? Emily deserves a vacation. Emily's like, you know what? I'm done. I'm gonna let someone else deal with
So,
this. I'm taking a break.
anyways, like, the Parkers disappear. Probably not happening, but I was like, we know that Maury has to be pulling the strings on some level here. The fact that Eugene's photos were wiped, it felt to me less like someone wanted to erase evidence, because everyone backs up their photos, like, either to the cloud or, like, to their computer or somewhere. Like, it just happens automatically. So someone wouldn't just delete Eugene's photos and assume, like, I've destroyed evidence of something bad happened. So I felt like it was less likely that and more like...
Also, I was really upset. I was like, how dare you take away those pictures of Buck that
Yeah, I
Eugene
was also
took?
very upset, because I was
And
like,
then knowing
family
that
pictures.
it is like an imagination, a makeshift DIY imagination station Nova Box program, it makes me so happy that Maury's like, I know enough about Eugene to know it is integral that he has pictures of his wife and his son on his phone. And I was like, that is very good for me.
So
Maury's like, if there aren't pictures of Eugene and Katrina and bacteria, no one's gonna believe it.
I was like, the more logical thing is that there's some form of blackmail it contained inside one of the pictures on Eugene's phone that he doesn't know about. There's some information. It doesn't even have to be in the pictures. The pictures, deleting them could just be a distraction entirely. Like, to whatever information off of Eugene's phone Maury was trying to get. Because here's the thing. We know from the beginning, blackmail has been the center of his operation. I compared him at the very beginning to the Shadow Broker from Mass Effect, where basically his whole deal is he just needs to gather as much information as possible so that he can, like, blackmail someone into doing, like, this thing for him, and they can get that information, and all he has to do is just, like, pluck little strings and sell information to these people so he can get this secret and just, like, manipulate this web of information that he has about everyone, and then he knows how to pull the strings on everyone around him to do whatever he wants, and keep it all in separate little things so no one knows what anything else is happening and no one can put the pieces together. So it makes sense that that's what he would want. But obviously that had nothing to do with it, because this was all fake unreality. But
you know what makes Maury one of the best villains Odyssey's ever had?
What?
So, like, you have Blackguard and you have Charles, and you have Dr. or like Professor Trask, and then you have Maury. I would say they're like probably the four biggest.
I would say
villains.
Mr. Skint is more so maybe
and
than
Mr.
Dr. Trask.
Skint.
But yeah.
Okay. Let's say like those are the biggest villains, the 5 biggest villains Odyssey's ever had.
Who was your fourth to last? Sorry? Oh, you said Trask and Skint, sorry.
Yeah, Trask and Skint. I'm going to count them as one. What do they all have in common, except for Maury?
They're adults.
I mean, that, and they all have a goal that we can figure out pretty fast and recognize. Blackguard, he wants Rukata, and he wants Wits End.
I wouldn't say we figured it out that fast with Blackguard.
I mean,
but
you know what I mean? Like, we know what their goal is.
At each stage, yeah, we're like, he wants applesauce. He wants...
And, like, with Charles, it's just, like, he wants power and stuff like that and control.
Yeah.
And with, like, Trask and Bennett...
He just wants a boatload
They just
of
wanted,
money.
like, money and stuff. And, like, those are all, like, good motivations for villains. Those are pretty typical things you see.
Yeah.
But you know what we've never had before in Odyssey?
A villain with no motive.
Yeah, a villain with no motive who's just a chaos villain like the Joker or something like that. And that's exactly what I think Maury is. He's just a boy who's bored. And honestly, what is scarier in the world than that?
It's
like,
true. And
someone who's that smart and that bored and has this level of like manipulation skills.
Yeah, and that
kind of terrifying.
That brings it back once again to the comparison to Moriarty, where it's like, why does he do all these things? It's because he's bored, because he's so smart and he just wants someone to challenge him. And the only way for him to feel challenged is to, like, resort to drastic things that will bring out foes who are, like, drastic in response.
I just thought of something. Okay, you know how, like, Emily and Matthew kind of have, like, their own little following? Like, they have people who know who they are.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they would have, like, made it into the newspaper at some point for, like, doing their mystery. Like, maybe for the Malted Milk Ball Falcon or something.
Uh-huh.
like that affected like a charity, like something kind of on a larger scale. So like you have people who are recognizing them, and then a little after that, Maury comes in. Do you think he heard about them? And then he caused a lot of chaos in his town and slipped up, got caught, and then they
No.
went to Odyssey.
No, I
And
don't
then
think
he's
so.
just like, I'm gonna seek out Matthew and Emily and challenge them because because
Because of the wonderful
of
things
all
he
the
does.
horrible things he does. So the thing is, Suzu and Mori, they know each other. Like they are one to one.
Yeah.
The thing is, he does not like she does not challenge him, and he's bored of her.
Yeah.
So he wants Emily to be his new rival because Suzu is boring him. So that's why he's going after
I
Emily.
wonder if she's bored by him as well. Do you think that's why she doesn't like foil him?
I
Because they
think
both
she is bored by him, but that's only because she didn't understand like the
the gravitas.
magnifications and like the gravitas of everything he's been doing
Uh huh.
until the like latest episode. Because whenever he interacts with her, he always plays himself off as like a really clueless fanboy idiot. And she's just not interested in that. She's like, "You're not Buck, get out of here." And like I think she's finally starting to realize that like this is a problem, basically.
So
But like what if he did
I don't think Emily
he
and
like pulls
Matthew
a
are a
Bradford
big enough.
with Wooten. He's like, I put a little pamphlet down for Odyssey, and his family's like, let's move to Odyssey. They have this nice house that burned down
The
once,
owners
and
mysteriously were poisoned.
we hear weird howling in the attic and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I don't think Emily and Matthew are famous enough or a big enough challenge to someone like Maury that he would be willing to move
They're
to
for a 12-year-old.
to a different town just in order to challenge them. I'm sure there's kids out there that would be.
Dude, if Maury did do this, it's not the craziest thing Maury's done.
I know that's true.
Like, think about it.
Okay, so anyways, back to
If he did do that though, and I called that, then I become a writer for Odyssey. That's what I win. I'm one of the writers now.
So we make it to the big reveal where Matthew's like, "'Twas I that set the house ablaze." Hence the title of the episode, "Further from the Truth." But I was like, I didn't think he would go to such a dark route to try and reconcile things,
Yeah,
especially when
I was listening and I was like, if this wasn't like sketchy enough before, it certainly is now. I was thinking the only way that I could see Matthew doing something like this is if Maury like plied him into doing it somehow.
I'll get there in a second. I was like, he wouldn't go such a dark route to try and reconcile things, especially because his whole thing is like, I'm trying to take a break from mysteries. I'm tired of them. So I've devised this whole thing for you, Emily. And like,
unless he's like, last mystery was a bad one, let's end off on a good one where you think I'm dead.
He and
Matthew?
Emily were so traumatized by it. Matthew would never do something so cruel and emotionally manipulative as to make Emily think that. But I was like, he all said like, we all planned this together. So I was like, if that's the case, then Maury absolutely like contributed directly or manipulated Matthew into thinking like, oh, this is a good idea. We should go with this. And I agreed with Emily as soon because I also noticed I was like, I feel like there's some things that don't like quite line up here, but I don't know what they are. Like something feels off.
That line where it's like, yeah, we did it yesterday. My brain, the second time I was listening to it, when I noticed that, like the discrepancies between how everything happened yesterday and also everything happened yesterday the day after, like I had Bernard's voice in my head. It was like, I said I'll do it tomorrow.
If yesterday's tomorrow, tomorrow's yesterday. I'll do it
yeah,
tomorrow.
but you said that yesterday, and I'll say it again tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, I like as soon as she started pointing this out, I was like, this must be an imagination station adventure. And like, yeah, as we've said time and again, like the psychological well-being of the kids in this town, like they need a class action lawsuit against Wit at this point. So Emily, it's scary to me that Emily is also like, computer shut down program, and like nothing happens. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then everything starts melting down, and it's like, oh, we double gaslit you. You are in the imagination station after all. And she wasn't even able to like use direct override commands to get out of it when she tried. So, um, to come back to this again, absolutely terrifying that Maury has turned this into a device that can just like snatch your mind out of the air as you're just like walking around and like put you into like an adventure that he's programmed.
See, the question
That is
is,
so dangerous. That is so like that is it's very similar to Novacom, but way more powerful than what they were ever able to accomplish on base in basically the exact same way as what they were doing.
see, the thing I can't figure out is, did Emily get out of it herself, or did Wit have to like
I
pull her out
Well,
of
it
it?
started collapsing because she figured out the point of the adventure, right? She like realized it was
Yeah.
fake. I think it's like lucid dreaming, right? She realized she was dreaming and it like started to melt, but it wouldn't go away. And they're like, "What's the point? What's the lesson?" And she like realized it, and then it broke down. And I assume Wit found her at the same time, or she was like maybe she was like still asleep, but she wasn't in the adventure, and he happened upon her, or he'd been like trying to rouse her, and she didn't come to until
She's like collapsed on the ground in the kitchen. That's so freaky, though.
yeah,
That's
like
so scary if you think about
well, that
it.
would be
Like,
that also makes me wonder. Like I said before, if she was just like standing, just like slumped but standing, like
a
unconscious.
giant hammer materialized and hit her in the head.
It's very creepy, and I mean, I've made
It
that joke about
is.
the inspiration station
Maury's
before.
a creepy kid. I've been saying it
I know,
literally. I've been literally saying it since his first
I know.
episode that this kid is really creepy and disturbing. And then he turned out to be like a short little sociopath.
I know I've made this joke every time the inspiration station has popped up because it works like the imagination station, but it's just a radio. So I'm always like, you just hit the button, and then it's like the Janet reset button in The Good Place, where you just like hit it and then just like slump to the floor.
That was like me when I was playing that Jackbox astronaut game. Like when you left and they were like, okay, we're gonna throw you out, and I was like, no, look at them. And
Um,
but like I when I was listening to this episode and all the voices started blending together, two things about the scene. One, I like had this moment where I was like, is Maury legitimately trying to like make Emily go insane? So like she won't mess with him anymore? What's he getting out of this? Two, when all the voices are like talking over each other and they're all like, what do you want, Emily? What are you gonna do? Are you sure this is what's going on? And then Wit, if you listen really closely, he has a line, he's like, do you want some ice cream?
yeah,
And I was like he's giving her advice and he's offering free ice cream. And honestly, it's really funny in retrospect. But like
I thought it
at
was
the
just like
time, I
it
was
was
like,
like
this is so
dialogue
twisted.
recycling from like earlier.
I know, but if you think about it my way, it's really
Okay,
funny. And also, there was a second where I lied. It was three things because there was a thing I remembered. There was a second where Emily was like, "Oh, this is the imagination station," and then everything starts going crazy. And then they're like, "This isn't the imagination station." And I had a second where I was like, "Oh, it's the room of
I
consequence."
did.
Of course. That's why I was like, she said, if she says it's the room of consequence, they'll let her out. Everything will be fine. That's pretty messed
I
up,
did have that
guys.
same thought. I was
And
like, come
then,
on, it's a technicality.
cause like the room of consequences glitched out like that before and gone crazy before. But like that being said, the imagination station has done it twice as many times because it's had five times the amount of episodes as the room of consequence. But if you think about it,
They're
that
literally the
means the
same
room of
technology
consequence
still.
has like a better ratio of not making the user go insane than the imagination station does.
I mean, the
And
room of
further,
consequence is kind of designed with that. Like that's like the
yeah,
purpose of it.
the room of consequence I still maintain is superior to the imagination station. But
So, uh, at the last stuff that we see from Emily is she's like it. This would have to be like someone. Man, they'd have to be good at tech, right, and programming, and with like yeah.
it'd
And
be
she's
so
like,
funny if they were like, it's Eugene.
and she's like, so that means they'd have to be good at math, right? And he's like, do you know someone good at math? And then it just cuts to Sina Mori, and I was
And
like, first
Emily
off,
just looks up at Matt Wit. She's like, "What did you do this?"
I was like, first off, if Emily is actually putting all the pieces together just from like, it needs to be someone who's smart, it has to be Maury. I was like, that would be really dumb if that's what causes her to figure it out after all the other clues and
Your
mysteries
criteria is so low.
that have got after all the other things that have gone on, like that is like that's the key that unlocks it
I
all in
mean,
her
I think
brain.
it's also the fact that like Mori and Suzu have been directly involved in every single thing that's gone on. Like even
Yeah,
if Mori wasn't there, the only time he wasn't there like in some
was
way
the escape
that
room.
she could completely perceive was the escape room,
Yeah,
and Suzu was there. And if Suzu was like, someone's sending me these texts, I think Emily can put things like together two and two in retrospect and be like, oh yeah, it's your insane
yeah.
brother.
But like you said, because this episode is called "Further from the Truth," I was really hoping she was going to be like, "Someone's good with numbers. I know who it is. Eugene."
It just smash cuts to like a bar noise of like a cell closing, and Eugene's just in jail, and he's like, guys. And Maury's just sitting there watching. He's like, huh.
Maybe she's not that smart after all. I'm going to a different town.
Maybe I need to have Buck as my rival.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so then we have like I like how Chris's wrap ups for these episodes keep on acting like we don't know what's going on. Like, that being said, I'm intensely interested in what is Suzu's role in all this, and we're gonna talk about that scene more in a second. Like, what all does she know about Mori's deeds, because she's super not entirely in the dark, and every time we hear them talk alone, I said in here, you can hear the silent mental battle and unspoken implications of each phrase. It's like they're Charles Xavier and Magneto having like a tersely civil debate.
Like, oh my gosh. This episode, like that ending scene,
Okay,
it got me. Like I think I like immediately re-listened to the ending scene, and I just kind of like sat there and I was just like, holy crap,
there was
these
so
vibes.
much going
They're so
unsaid in that
malicious.
scene where Suzu's like, "Oh, did you hear about all of this?" And Mori's like, "I did. I'll help you look for your notebook." And then he has the most cryptic line in the world that you pointed out
And also
earlier,
he came into a room without like her asking him to come in.
just like
He was just
Mom.
like, hey. He was just like, hey, I just want to generally talk about this weird thing that happened, not that I was involved or anything.
And like, so he picks up her notebook. He's like, "Japanese is such a beautiful language. I wish you would teach me one day." And she's like, "Perhaps when you're ready."
What
Or
does
so, I
that
think that wasn't the exact
mean?
wording, but that was like, it was to the effect
She's
of that.
like, maybe when you're ready, brother. And he's just
Like,
like, good
sure thing,
night,
sis.
sis. And I thought back of like
Uh,
how I
like one
mentioned a
episode
couple
ago, yeah.
episodes ago that no one says brother and sister, but like I'm gonna give them both a pass
Because it
because
was,
in Japan you have like Nissan and stuff like that.
yeah, and
Um,
Nate-chan,
and
or
it's like
Nate-san.
yeah,
I
and it's
also
like
give
really
him a pass
common,
because
so that totally makes sense. And Maury is a little weirdo, so he gets a pass because he would be weird.
well, even beside from that, the tone of the conversation was like very stilted and tense and like overly formal, because it's like they're like playing verbal like chess fencing with each other. So it makes sense that they like have these like weird stilted formalities in the way that they're like
Yeah,
talking to each other. Um,
dude,
so
this scene was so bonkers.
the line about that. Okay, do you remember album 57 or
What about
58?
it?
Sorry, album 58, "The Ties That Bind." Because
I was about to say we are in 58, but we're in 68.
because I remember it, unfortunately. And one of the things that wasn't terrible about that album was how, as we reviewed it, we immediately at the beginning, we were like, "Oh, it's Hadley. We solved it, episode 1. We're so smart." And
You said that. I didn't think it was Hadley.
I was so caught up because it made so much sense from the beginning, back before it was obvious, that I thought it was like a really smart figure out thing. Which then, as more details got revealed,
Maury.
it just got like, it served to further confirmation bias, instead of if I looked at it objectively and been like, "Oh, there's so many clues that he's actually the red herring."
Yeah, and then I agreed with you after like one episode, basically, that it was him. And then there was like a red herring that it wasn't him because
Yeah,
it was so obvious it was him.
yeah, and then it turned out it was Jules who was the perilous pen. So what I'm wondering is, with this like line, what if Maury is the same thing, where from the first episode we had him pegged and like this whole relationship, when actually like Suzu is the one who's been pulling the strings even more so than Mori, and Mori's like, I wish that you would like teach me like all of like your ways and even the ways that
Hmm.
you're like doing all of these things, because like I'm trying to do stuff, but like you're the one who's like at the head of all of it, and we've been putting this all on Mori when actually Suzu is the one who's in charge of it all, and Mori is going to go
Huh.
down for it in the next episode maybe, and like I said, and then like Suzu is going to. I just want this arc to keep going. I don't want it to end in the next 3 episodes.
I'm kind of torn on that because, like, on the last thing you just said, because, like, I was thinking about it today,
I mean,
and
now at this point, it's
how
like,
many years ago did Mori get
I don't
introduced? Like,
know.
I feel like it's been about 5 years or something like that.
It hasn't been that long, but I was living at the G house now that I think about it when we filmed the
Yeah,
Key
so it's
Size.
been like 5 years.
I guess it has been a while. It doesn't feel
Yeah, because
like
I
it.
remember us talking about Mori falling out the window in your bedroom at the G house,
Yeah.
which means it's maybe been 6 years.
No.
Um,
It's probably been 4 years.
but like
That is a
I
while. I'll give you that.
I get your sentiments about not wanting this to end
It's
because
just the
it's
pace.
really
It's just like the
interesting.
pacing was like this, and then the escape room was like that. So
Yeah,
I get that now we're at the high point that it needs to climax and have falling action. But
because
I
like
expected there to be more rising action
yeah, I
instead of
know.
like this sudden
See, the problem
asymptote.
is, and I talked about this in a lot of albums when we finished reviewing them. I remember a lot of times where I was saying like, this album was good, but there wasn't any Mori in it,
Yeah,
and I think I said that like twice or
it was
something like
every
that.
other episode or every other album we were getting one more episode.
Yeah, and
He
like
first appeared in
that's
album 60, I
such
think. So yeah, it would have been
slow
4 years ago.
pacing that like now that we're finally getting all this Mori content, it's like this is great, but I really wish it was better paced out, which unfortunately, as we've talked about before, isn't really possible since we're doing 6 episode albums
Yeah.
and we don't want like it wouldn't be good if like 3 of the 6 episodes were all about Mori.
Yeah. You mean like
Um,
next album?
yeah,
But I know you
that
mean three
doesn't
different
count. That's the
episodes.
finale.
Yeah.
They get a pass for that. I'm glad it's a 3-parter. It's been a while since we've gotten a
I'm
3-parter in like a
excited.
core album. I'm really excited.
And I'd like to point out, like I said, obviously, like we're kind of alluding to the next album in ways that like, we haven't heard it, but I'm assuming you guys know what's going on well more than we do.
Yeah,
The
and
next
also I
album,
saw
it begins with
the
a
title for
three-parter
the 3-parter
called
today.
The Rydell Revelations.
Yeah, only the first 2 episodes are out.
Well, the third one would have come out today, I think.
Let me check.
Anyways, my point
Last
is,
time I checked, which was today, I only
it's
saw the
his
first
last
2.
name, which does kind of lend a possibility to what I was saying. That
Oh, yep, there it is.
the Revelations
I almost just clicked on it.
that
That would have been
Rydell
bad.
is Mori and Suzu's last name.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's true.
I think there's
That would be
revelations
interesting though,
to come about
because
both of them.
the idea that Suzu is like the smart one out of like the smarter one out of the 2 of them, and Mori wants to be on her level, but he isn't and can't be in some ways.
Mean?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I like really want to just like go out and just immediately listen to the 3-parter right after we finish reviewing this, but we still have to do the predictions,
Yeah.
and that's in a different episode. And I also genuinely do think I should re-listen to all the Mori episodes.
And we still have to record our reviews in between each part of that 3-parter.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. It's a good thing you mentioned that. Otherwise, I totally would have forgotten, and I would have done what I did
But also
before.
think about how juicy it's going to be in the midst of that 3-parter and be theorizing about
No, I want to listen to all 3.
things. So yeah, what Maury's like?
What Maury can we say about
what
this
he
episode?
is all about? Like you said, he has the first time. I mean, the writer's ruse. Okay, to start from the beginning, we have the key suspect for Parker
I'm going
for
to pull up
president.
his episode list.
One of the 2 was first. Either way, the first things that he did was manipulate the election in order to make sure that Olivia became president.
I don't remember how to spell. Oh, found it. Found his
And
name.
he also like got a skeleton key for every single locker in the entire school, opened them, went through them all, and then like got out without anyone realizing what was going on or why he was doing it. So he had all of this blackmail information, and he had manipulated who he wanted to be in the highest position of student power at the school. So
I feel like this isn't right because it just put him in like so many episodes. For some reason, it lists album 46 to 70, and then it just says like Maury's in this many episodes, and then there's just a bunch of zeros by all those first episodes. Like, why would you do that?
Well,
okay, Maury's been in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes. That doesn't sound right.
That sounds about right to me. I mean, I can check my.
I don't trust this. You should check your episode list.
Yeah. Okay.
This one's weird.
Further from the truth. Show in playlist. Maury Rydell. Okay, 6 episodes. Parker for President and the Key Suspect. So those are both about like gathering power. Secret of the Writer's Ruse was about setting a test for Emily so that he could kind of like create a benchmark for her. He wanted to see how quickly and how she would go about solving this mystery. And he even comments at the end like, like how she compared up to his expectations on it and stuff.
Didn't he say like she was a little slow or something like that?
Yeah. The Good in People is the episode where he like got the drama club to do whatever they did, and I really don't remember what the point of all that was. That
it was like to change who was in leadership.
Yeah.
For the drama club or something.
I guess that's
like Zoe became in charge or something.
Or something like
instead
that.
Of Olivia.
Yeah.
Because Olivia lied about like
the money,
the band money.
Yeah.
No, the drama money for like entering the contest or whatever.
Yeah. So basically everything is like directly about Emily, or it's about like
gaining power,
testing Emily,
way.
Or gaining like power and ways to manipulate people. And then we have a sacrificial escape. Like I said, I still think it's funny that Chris does these wrap up and she's like, who's doing all this stuff? We just don't know. And it's like, I get that, like, okay.
The idea that Chris genuinely doesn't know is so funny to me.
Like I said, I thought it was especially funny after the escape room episode because Atticus Schaefer is credited in the credits of the episodes.
And I feel like even just not, because I don't remember who voices Maury.
I know, but if you know, it's funny because you like...
The entire time you're listening to the episode, you're like, that's Maury.
You go on his like AI wiki page, it's like Atticus Schaefer's voiced 2 characters, Maury Rydell and mysterious Jigsaw voice. I've never seen Maury and the mysterious voice in the same room at the same time. So we have that, and like you said, that was interesting because I thought, the point of this whole thing was to like break up Matthew and Emily and to like kind of cement whatever he wanted to manipulate in the relationship. But this episode, Emily draws a connection to something that I thought Maury was kind of doing as a red herring, which was this idea of like, oh, I'm trying to like teach you a lesson or do something good by putting you through this adversity. And then in the same way in this episode, all of the clues are leading Emily, and seemingly this entire mystery was not only to give her more hints as to the fact that Maury was doing it, but also to like make her realize, like, to confront her feelings about what was happening with Matthew, that was the key to set her out of the adventure, was to like come to this realization, like he's putting her through these things to try and help her, which does make me wonder if there is some level on which he is actually like trying to help people, but he just really doesn't know how, and the only ways that he can like try and help people is by like putting them through adversity. Like he is genuinely trying to be a good guy, but his sense of like social interaction,
his like sense of morality is
so warped that this is the only way that he can understand to do it, which would be interesting.
I don't know if it's going to be like he had a really rough upbringing before he was adopted.
Like I don't think
that like kind of messed with him or something.
I don't think it's actually as simple as all that. Like I think it's an interesting theory. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, he was just trying to help everyone
like,
the whole time.
Honestly,
he was really bad at it.
I really don't want it to be like he was adopted, so he's awful or something like that, or
I would say
he
this.
thinks he's
If
great.
there's any show that I
So
would not expect to do that, it would be this show because
that's
there's
true.
plenty of
Because
like
Eugene was adopted
there's
and Buck is
there's
adopted.
plenty of
And
morals where I'm like, ooh, Odyssey like missed the mark on this one. But one thing they've always been very like consistent on is being like pro adoption.
yeah, that's true. You're right. I don't know what they're doing. Because maybe Maury's trying to like justify what he's doing to himself.
Maybe that would be interesting, like a Richard Maxwell kind of thing. Like he's trying to do all these things, but while doing it, he's also trying to drop in these little things to like kind of give like Emily like I heard her 3 steps backwards, but I'm going to help her 1 step forward so
Oh,
that
you
I
mean
can.
like with Richard in the books?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant in the
No,
episode.
like
I
I
was
was
thinking,
like
when did that
justifying
happen?
like oh I'm protecting like Connie and
Yeah, where
Lucy,
he's
but
just like, "Oh, I set Tom's barn on fire, which was awful." But go read the Blacker books if you haven't, or watch our reviews for them. They're crazy good. Everything with Richard is amazing.
yeah,
So like basically, if you haven't read them or watched those reviews, Richard is like, "I'm gonna set Tom's barn on fire," which I really don't want to do, and I'm gonna be really careful, and I'm gonna try and just make it like a really harmless fire, but then it was like he's an idiot and he sets himself on fire and then he almost dies and then he sets the barn on fire and almost gets Tom killed and Rachel and Leah killed. And
Rachel.
and then by like positioning Connie and Whit so they'll be there and Connie will get rehired, he's like, I'm actually helping Connie because if she's working for Whit, Blackguard can't hire her at Blackguard's palace and
Yeah,
stuff. And
he's like
he
I've
also does that
allowed
with Lucy
Blackard
a lot
to
too.
use me to pull all of these like naive people into his web, so I need to keep manipulating them so that Blackard doesn't do it instead because I'll be like I'll look out for them.
I'm the lesser of the two evils,
exactly,
basically.
exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
We should probably like wrap up this review
Yeah.
because we've been talking about this episode for almost an hour and a half.
And we could probably talk about it an hour and a half longer. If
Yeah, I'm going to give this episode a 5 out of 5. That is not the rating I was expecting coming into this review, but we've unpacked so much more of it while talking about it, and there's still so much more to unpack that we can't. And I'm sure once we talk about the premiere for next album, there's going to be stuff we can come back to this and kind of like re-understand motivations and stuff.
It's kind of funny because I think I was also going to give this episode like a way lower rating, but actually
because I was like so confused.
Yeah. I think this episode is going to be one of the more controversial between us two because we had no idea where we were going into this with their rating. I'm going to give it a 4.5 only because, and that's so much higher than I thought I would give it, only because this episode is really hard to figure out what's going on. Like, which, like, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can be if it takes you almost an hour and a half to figure out what was going on in it. And multiple listens, because you would have listened to this twice, I assume?
I've listened to it twice, yeah. But here's the thing, there's some episodes that you have to take that long to figure it out because it's just like, it's weirdly written and confusing. This does make sense once you figure it out. It took us so long. It took us so long because it's just like, it's an intricate web. So it's the good kind of taking a while to unpack it, not the bad kind where it's just like poorly written.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know. Maybe I'll give it like a 4.
I'm going to give it a 4.8.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to knock down because, I mean, there's so many things that are super good about it. It, like, the moral itself is pretty, like, and, like, I don't think that the excitement and, like, the intrigue and mystery of it is quite enough to make up for the deficit in, like, having, like, kind of a really robust moral that also pairs with it. Like, in the same way, the Sacrificial Escape was crazy on, like, a plot level and a character level, but it also had this whole, like, you know, die for each other kind of vibe.
You know what we should do at the end of the 3-parter?
What?
We should rank this arc.
I was wondering, should we do like a standalone episode of the Oddcast where we just kind of
That's what I was just about to
retrospective
suggest, honestly,
through the
where we
whole Maury
talk about this
story?
arc in full. But I don't know if that'll be necessary because we're probably going to do that when we talk about the three-parter anyway.
Yeah.
But I do think we should at least, out of 5, give like a rating to how good we think this arc has been.
Yeah.
And you better believe I'm gonna knock off some points about the pacing.
Okay, we should close this here because we still have to talk about the album as a whole.
Oh my gosh, I forgot. It's almost
well,
midnight.
we're not doing
you
it
haven't
tonight.
eaten yet.
We're not doing it tonight,
Okay, good.
but it will be in this episode. So we're going to stop this recording here, yeah, because it is past 11:30 now.
We've been recording for like 2 hours.
And this is all I've done since I got home from work and showered, and I'm supposed to be
You need to eat.
bed in 25
You need to
minutes.
eat.
Yeah, and I haven't eaten anything yet.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay.
Go eat.
All right, we're back now to go as fast as we can through the album because that was a little bit of time that we spent talking.
It took us so long we had to go to bed.
Yes. Okay, so album 68 review. First episode was Good Job. Kathy,
Good job.
starting us out. It was a good job that Kathy did writing this. It was just the best content. We got Jillian and Jason like peak
Jason.
content and ending up with Jillian working at Triple J's, which aka Quadruple J's now.
Yes.
Quadruple J Antiques Double L Jillian Double L Marshall.
Double L love.
Double L Llama. And it introduced the Calhouns as like a full-sized family instead of just Joseph and Cooper.
And they're all great. They're all so good. I love them all so much.
It also
really quick
Feldstein.
disclaimer. I want to say it before I forget. We talked about in the Further from the Truth episode about how Maury was adopted. I started my re-listen of the early Maury episodes today. Suzu was the one who was adopted. It wasn't Maury. So that probably annoyed a couple people.
I don't think it was last episode that we mentioned that. I think
we were talking about it from Further in the Truth about how Maury was adopted. So by last episode, I mean last episode we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to say about Good Job besides the heaping praise?
It was so good, Kathy. It was so good. I loved everything about this episode so much. 5 stars. It was so good.
Playing Favorites is next, which is Wyatt and Bridget episode, and then David, Olivia, and Matthew. When Wyatt is doing his 50 slang, he pulls out copacetic as one of the words.
That sounds like acidic, like something dangerous.
Now, I don't believe you were with us at the time. It was at the outlet malls with Mom and Dad and me. It was about a year ago, I think, and that was the first time I heard that word. I was in the car, and Dad used it, and neither Mom or I...
Oh, you told me about this.
Knew
Yeah,
what it
I wasn't
meant.
with you.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember what the word was, yeah.
And you said that's not a word, and then he said yes it was, and then you looked it up.
I looked it up, and Mom and I were both surprised at, like, yeah, it is, and he used it correctly. Dad just pulled out this random, like, fancy word that neither of us knew, and he was a little offended that we were both so surprised that he, like, knew this word that neither of us had heard before.
What does it mean?
It means, like, everything is good and in proper order.
Huh. That's, like, fancy slang.
Yeah, so, like, I was like, that's such a fancy word, like, it's odd that Wyatt used it here, so I looked it up again, and now I see that last time I glossed over in the definition the fact that even though it sounds fancy, it is actually marked as, like, informal slang in the dictionary. So the reason Dad actually knew it is because he's so old that he had, like, 50 slang still rattling around in his brain.
I'm gonna tell him you said that when he gets back from work tomorrow.
Because I was like, now it makes sense. It's because he's, like... that Mom and I didn't know it because Mom's 4 years younger than Dad, and he was born in 1960, and it's 50 slang. So, like, he just barely caught the tail end of, like, hearing this slang word before it went out of date. And
we saw the moon landing, and everyone was like, copacetic.
I didn't address this in our first review, but there's this ongoing joke in the episode with David about, like, how he just keeps on buying different fast food for the kids because he doesn't have enough time to, like, feed them and stuff, and he's incapable of, like, looking after them while Eva's gone. And
Yeah, I almost talked about that, but then I forgot.
I'm always really annoyed when media reinforces this idea that the father in a hetero marriage isn't like actually a parent and they're more of just a babysitter, but they only need to look after the kid when the mom is absolutely unable to do so. And the charming, like, jokesy presentation that persists in media of, oh no, the wife's away. Can I keep the kids alive for 4 days? What will they eat? I don't even know what school they go to. It supports, like, on one side, the societal image of fathers as being extremely disconnected and emotionally detached from their children, and simultaneously supports putting 98% of all the child rearing labor onto the mother, which sucks on both sides. So,
I almost commented on this because I was thinking that for basically the whole episode, and then I thought like I do know some people who like where really like families where the wife has gone out of town and then just a lot of fast food is bought, not because the husband can't cook, because he's really busy at work, which it sounds like was a big thing with what David was doing. Because it
yes,
sounded like he was basically going from work to really late at home almost every day.
yeah, it's a good thing
And
Ava
he
has
was
all
just
the free
like
time
picking up
with
food
being a
on the way
medical
home.
professional. It definitely has more free time than David does.
Well, that's true.
Ava's job is busier than David is, so she makes time to
That's
do
true.
it.
Never mind.
Um, yeah, I mean, like we said before, high points to the end of Wyatt's story with the lie detector scene and getting to see Valerie get told off like that.
It was the scene with Bridget was so good.
Apart from those, the rest of the episode we thought was pretty average.
Yeah, I still agree with that.
Next was A Wise Surprise.
I thought this one was okay.
I didn't mention it before. I don't think I noticed, this may have been in a previous episode. Maybe we've talked about it before. But Wooten and Penny's doorbell is Camptown Races, which is a fun reference. Um, so yeah, it was a cute episode. The writing was fun. We were glad to see Charlotte show up again, and another like two definite stages of plot development for the family, which are Charlotte's pregnancy and the Wise is going to be regularly coming and going from Odyssey, and it has that weird wrap up at the end.
Yeah, I really didn't like the wrap up at the end. That was the worst part of the episode for me. I I really want more Charlotte. I want there to be an episode that's like kind of Amazing Race style challenge, but not as bad as that. Um, and like Penny and Charlotte have to team up or something. Like I want to see Charlotte and how she problem solves and just like interacts with Penny one on one without like their parents and Wooten being around. And I want
Yeah,
to meet her husband.
yeah. I mean, because the first time that we met her, the whole conceit of her presence was kind of like Penny's sibling inferiority complex, feeling like her parents like thought that Charlotte was better than her. And then in this episode, where it was almost the opposite, where they kept on like talking bad about Charlotte behind her back while like talking up Penny, especially after they thought that she was pregnant and stuff. So I feel like every time we see Charlotte, it's like you said, it's only filtered through the lens of how Frank and Eleanor are perceiving her, or how Penny is perceiving Frank and Eleanor perceiving her. So it'll be nice if we could get to see just Charlotte and Penny directly without having their parents kind of like obfuscating that relationship.
Uh, breaking news.
Breaking
This
news.
episode was so weird.
I
I'm
still like it.
sorry. I almost said I'm sorry, Marluxia. I'm sorry, Keith Bergeson. Uh, this I I thought Zoe was interesting.
I
The
still like
episode.
Ted Humphries in this episode. I like that it ended up being a callback to Swept Away, which in and of itself was
Yeah,
an episode that was like broadly framed by Ted Humphries as well, with his
I
like
like.
news coverage of what was going on.
I feel like I equally like and dislike this episode.
I just
I
liked
don't really know how to feel about it.
I liked what a departure it was. It felt kind of like a change of heart kind of thing where it's like let's just throw us into like the
Yeah,
weirdest side character, but like in a way that I enjoyed the
You know what
character.
it
I thought
is?
the like we
It's
said, I
like
thought the lesson was really good, and I thought that the plot was well done, and it was really relevant, both in like what was the moral, but also like the execution in terms of like talking about media literacy, specifically in terms of like people making crazy conspiracy theories on YouTube, and like talking about how when you see someone who's like doing their like ad reads for their sponsorship deals, that you need to understand that they're reading an ad copy and not like actually like speaking original script and stuff like that. And I thought that
this
there was
episode to me, it's like watching Star Versus, and then for the first time you watch the Spider in a Top Hat episode, and you're like, "What? What is this?" Like that's how I feel about this episode. That's my best
it's an
comparison.
interesting comparison. Also,
I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong, right?
we had AJ Manic in this episode. The first time that we hear him, he says the AJ stands for Adam Jackson. So Adam Jackson Manic. And it's interesting because
That had to be a reference,
his
right?
initials are AJ, which is very close to PJ, and his last name he says Manic, which
Isn't PJ Manning?
may be a nickname for Manning. Like, here's the thing.
Do you think that's his stage name and it's just straight up PJ?
I did look. It's not the same actor, even though they do sound very similar. Isaac
Wait,
Kessler,
really?
this is the only episode he's been in. Yeah, I thought it
Huh.
was the same actor.
They sound like identical,
They
basically.
sound extremely similar.
Huh.
He has a last name that sounds like it's probably a stage name because he's like, Manic and stuff. So it very well could be like a stage name for Manning, and his name is AJ, and it seems to me very possible that his older brother could be PJ. They have very similar personalities and voices. I think that they're brothers.
Do you think this is actually PJ and the writers put this in the show to make us go insane?
It's possible. You know,
But the idea that they're brothers makes a lot of sense. Okay, I think they're not
that's
just
the kind of thing.
brothers. I think they're twins.
That's the kind of thing that like parents do, right? With like the naming convention, where it's like we have
Yeah.
AJ and PJ.
And what they tried to do with Wooten and Wellington.
Yeah. They're like, we want to name us X names, but they couldn't think of enough. And I was like, you've never played Kingdom Hearts, clearly. Winslow Bassett.
Okay, Always Home. This episode was very emotional. I feel like I don't know, I was more emotional about like the Tom half,
Yeah.
but I was kind of a little bit more invested in like was their last name Perkins? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Perkins.
Yeah.
In the Perkins family storyline. But that's
Yeah.
only
Well, I mean, it was
because
like
there
80%
wasn't a
of the
lot.
runtime.
Yeah, exactly. Because there wasn't a lot of focus on the Tom stuff. It wasn't about Tom.
Yeah.
But
The Tom
and
stuff did hit the hardest, obviously.
I feel like we don't really have to talk about these two as much.
Yeah.
Because
We just earlier in this
talked
video.
about them.
Yeah.
Further from the truth.
It wasn't until
we can't talk more about this episode.
It wasn't until the second time listening to Always Home that I understood the turtle joke at the end, because
What?
I didn't realize that he was making a joke, because as he said it, what I thought this was I thought the line was going to continue, and he was saying like, he taught me like the importance of being always home, and that's why I'm telling you guys that I've retired from the reserves. I'm going to be always home now. But then like the line just ended there, and she was like, "Oh, Dad," and I was like, because my expectations were there, and so when it fell short of that, my brain couldn't like reconnect to reestablish like a different context for it and understand that he was making a joke about turtle shells.
Can you imagine if he was like, it taught me the importance of being always home. Unfortunately, I've never been a good student. I leave tomorrow morning. Bye, guys.
Yeah, no, I thought he was saying like Flash was always in Odyssey, and I haven't been, but he's taught me that lesson now. I'm gonna be always home, and so I couldn't like put my brain back onto like a completely different context to hear it and figure it out. And then the second time through, I was like, what does it mean? And then I was like, oh, turtle shell. Got it.
So, looking at the album cover again, is that Kayla standing beside
Yeah.
Connie? Or is that Sky?
It's Kayla.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't remember if I pointed that out in our review of Good Job, but yeah, I thought it was cool that we already got art for what Kayla looks like.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And we technically have art for, I'm going to sneeze.
For Joseph, yes, that's true.
Yeah, we technically have art for half of their family at this point.
Yes. Young boy Joseph from Innocent Scorched Land.
I cannot get over how much Jillian looks like Chris. You know what? Jillian becoming a mainstay main character, like her growing quickly into a main character, is becoming very hopeful in my mind since she's like on an album cover.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say she's already a main character at this point, like in terms of the density that she's been in since she showed up.
Do you think because Katie, do you think Katie
influenced it like she did with Penny?
Yeah, and she's like, more female characters. We have one. Let's do two. Please, we need
Let's
more.
Push the envelope here.
Let's push the envelope and have two more female characters who aren't Connie instead of just lonely Connie.
I know, getting to have episodes where it's like Connie and Jules and Jillian living together and then Penny hanging around. And it's like, look at this.
Good.
It took us
decades. Look at you guys passing the Bechdel.
It took us 30 years to get here, but...
I started watching BNA on Netflix, and literally within the first 2 minutes of that show, it passes the Bechdel test like 3 times.
Yeah, good.
And I was like, good for you guys.
It's supposed to be like the lowest possible bar set.
And yet...
Because
remember that kids' radio episode where they were just like, and the best part is, no girl. Anyway, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm still like riding the happiness high of everything with graduation, like Taz grad yesterday. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want anyone to spoil my fun.
My rankings for this album, I'm going to put Good Job at the top, and then Further From the Truth just underneath. And then Why Surprise, Breaking News, Always Home, Playing Favorites.
I'm going to say...
I'm going to put Breaking News above Why Surprise, actually.
Okay, I just want to say I don't hate Breaking News.
We know, Victoria. It's fine.
Yeah, I think I am going to put it at the bottom.
For plenty of time.
Breaking News, Always Home.
Is this you ranking upwards?
Yeah, I'm ranking up.
Okay.
So Breaking News, Always Home, Breaking News, Playing Favorites, Always... Okay, Breaking News, Playing Favorites, Always Home, Why Surprise, Further From the Truth, Good Job. That's my answer. I'm sealing it in.
Okay, so our rankings are identical except for Breaking News being moved.
Yeah. Sorry, what was yours again?
Mine was the same as yours, except I put Breaking News in 3rd place.
Oh, okay.
Above Why Surprise and the Perkins episodes.
I feel like we're pretty on the same level for our opinions on these episodes of the season.
Yeah. So, that was album 68.
Oh, should we rank it out of 5?
The album out of a whole, I'm going to give it 4.5.
I'm going to give it a...
strong premiere, strong finale, but mostly middle.
I'm going to give it like a 3.8. I feel like lots of the episodes could have been stronger. The only one I gave a 5 out of 5 to was Good Job.
Mm.
Because Good Job was the only episode that I can think of that I didn't really have any problems with.
Yeah, I'm going to drop it to 4.2. I think that's more reasonable mathematically.
Yeah. So, because, like, Good Job, I thought the whole thing was great. Playing favorites, I mostly just really liked the lie detector scene. Why Surprise, I thought it was just, like, okay overall, but it never really surprised me with where it was going or did anything, like, incredibly new. The wrap-up was really weird. Not that it was a bad episode or anything. Breaking news.
I love how I didn't see, like, almost any of that stuff coming, and you were all like, the beginning, and then I was like, Terezi's like, genuine
I thought
shock
it was just
face.
really obvious what was happening at every plot beat.
I mean, in retrospect, yeah.
I think our brains are wired differently when it comes to storytelling.
Well, like I said, the thing that I picked up on is, like, Wooten and Penny at the beginning, they introduced the trip to Thailand, and Penny's like, they're going to be so surprised.
Yeah,
and then
you thought that, like,
and then
they
it cuts
were doing
immediately to Eleanor saying, Penny and Wooten are going to be so surprised. And because of that parallel, I thought that maybe the point was that they had the same surprise, not just that they both wanted to surprise the other about something. And so I thought that they were also, like, getting them a trip to Thailand with them and stuff. And so
the best thing about Breaking News was the fact that it's so unique, and we don't really have another episode like that. And I'd say the moral was really strong. Always Home had several really nice moments, but I don't know. I don't know what it is about that one. I feel like it was maybe missing something. I'm not sure what. Then Further from the Truth was a little bit confusing, but good on reflection.
Yeah.
So that is why I gave it a 3.8. Those are my final thoughts.
Okay.
On each episode.
What are we doing next time, Victoria?
We're gonna
Speaking of Breaking News being an episode that there's not any other episodes like it, what are we doing next time?
We're gonna do Top This from album, I want to say 31?
24.
24. I was really off. Okay. Right. Yeah, 24, because it's that one's right by the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're gonna do Day in the Life, album 11. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna do our 69 nice predictions. So
and 2020 AIOC predictions.
Yeah, we're gonna just knock them all out together.
So that then we can keep talking about new episodes, because all our predictions for the next stuff will be out of the way.
Yep.
So,
and also, when I said that we haven't had a 3-parter in a while in a main album, there was a 3-parter, like, last album with Buck and Mr. Skint, basically. So, whoopsie on my part. I said Maury was adopted, and I was wrong about that. At least I corrected myself before anyone else corrected me.
That's the important thing. I mean, you don't know that. You don't know what comments people have left by the time they get to this point in the video. Anyways, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner, or Dr. Blacker, whatever.
So very sleepy.
And you've been watching episode 188 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
See ya.